Jesse Chen. Okay. Victor Chen. Anthony Chang. Sachi Desai. Amita Defode. Brett Friedman. Lorena Fu. Great job. Michael Geisinger. Sheer Goldfinger. Charles Hess. Kevin Hu. Nafessa Jagadir. Hannah Kim. Hannah Kim. Melissa Kim. Myung-Hoon Kim. Leah Levine. Catherine Lee. Sherry Liu. Vivian Liu. Matthew Marovitz. There we go. Nice. Brandon Go. Nice. Melissa Oberstedt. John Polito. Shin Park. Dewani Patel. Michael Ryan. Jessica Schwartzman. Hope Zabold. Shweta Subramaniam. Seyun Sul. Harl Tillinger. Ryan Yan. Harrison Yang. Tina Young. Anthony Zhang.
All right, thank you, Mr. Goodwin. And the next little presentation that we have, I'm going to let Dr. Smith talk a little bit about, but it's a video presentation and a collaboration between High School West and the University of the Arts. So Dr. Smith, if you do the introductions to folks, and I have a couple people that are going to talk, and some students and folks we want to make sure we introduce.
Thank you, Dr. Malash. Board of Education.
It's hard to project without the mic. We are delighted and honored to have with us students who participated and produced the video that we're going to show you. We have with us Ms. Janine Kaplan, a special education teacher at Cherry Hill West. Ms. Kaplan, come on up. West recently collaborated with the University of the Arts through their special education classes to work on art projects together. And this is a great example of secondary education and post-secondary education working together towards growth and success for our students. And I want to let Ms. Kaplan talk a little bit more about that whole experience.
Thank you. This way? Yep. Hello. So in the spring last year, the Circle Club, which is a social club for special and regular ed students at West, went on a trip and to celebrate our year. And one of the trips that we went on was a tour through the Italian market in Philadelphia. And one of the tour guides happens to be also an instructor at the University of the Arts, and she teaches an inclusion arts class, which is part of a master's program, to become a teacher. And so we were able to form a partnership with her and her students, and they came to West and met with our students. We went over to University of the Arts, where the students put together different projects and worked on different things together. And then the students at University of the Arts, well, you'll see in the video, kind of took the projects from our kids and made them animated and kind of made a whole display of them, and then hosted an art show later that month where we were able to invite parents and students back again to Philadelphia in the evening and had, cheese and their art displays, and it was just really nice, lovely experience. So I have one of the students here, Eric Carlson. I've been lucky to know for the last 3.5 years.
Hi, my name is Eric Carlson. I am a senior in the functional program at West High School. Go to West. I love West. Recently, I got to make an art with students who are studying to be teachers at the University of the Arts. They came to West, and we went there, and then we went at night for an art show to show our parents our creation. It was awesome. It was so proud. This is just one of the awesome things at West. All of my teachers are great and teach us a lot of things. We learn math, reading, and other things, but we also take trips into the community to learn how to use the New Jersey Transit and Access Link. We click learn and how to do jobs at Shop West and practice our money skills. We can participate in any activities we want, or we have our own inclusion programs like Circle Club and formal dance, and our musical. Special things happened this November for two of my friends in my program. My friend Hugo was homecoming king, and my girlfriend Joan scored the winning touchdown in the Powerpuff football game. I just love West High School.
Eric, that was fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and how great West is in general, and especially through this program. So thanks, Eric. And I just want to say thanks to Mrs. Carlson and Mr. Carlson also for just all your support also for West and the program there. So thank you. We have with us two awesome kids as well, both juniors, Jack Begley and Vince Galato, and they're here. Why don't you come on up, guys? So you didn't know it, but tonight is the premiere of a short film that these two gentlemen produced, okay? We're going to show it to you in a second, but first I want to let them talk a little bit about what it was like to make it and just their whole experience.
Hello. So first and foremost, we'd like to thank Ms. Kaplan for the opportunity to allow us to come and go along with the students as they went on this journey, because it was also a journey for us and how we were able to grow as kids, as filmmakers, and how much it just meant to us and the kids. So first off, we went to Cherry Hill West, and we watched the kids create art with the art students. Then we went to Philadelphia and actually got to go see the city and go as a journey from high school to college life, and how that transformation was just so much and so important to us. And so we were able to go and see how the kids interacted with the kids at West and how it just meant everything to us and to them. And then last, we went back for the art show and how the kids really transformed what the art that our kids created and how they made it just so spectacular. And so both of us have worked with the broadcasting group at Cherry Hill West for 3 years now, and we'd like to give a shout out to Mr. Ansert. He's a great teacher, we love him. And so we've just done so much with the broadcasting group, and this video is basically to show our growth as broadcasting students and as students at Cherry Hill West. And this just meant so much for us and for the kids at Cherry Hill West. And we share time with them every day. We go to lunch with them. We go to gym with them. And it just meant so much to all of us. And so this video is basically that whole entity as a whole. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much. And before we lights are going to go out, just one.
Let's do this, baby. I love you, girls. Let's do this.
My name is Trish and I teach the Art and Inclusionary Education class here at the University of the Arts. I met the students and realised what a fantastic group of students they were, and talked to her about possibly doing an art project together. together. We'd come out, students had come out, 12 students in my class, and about 6 or 7 of those students came out, met the students at Cherry Hill High School West, and did projects with them and talked about ideas of what we'd do when everyone came to visit here back at the university. And so then everyone came in and we did 2 different projects. One that was about making individual monsters out of model magic, and then one that was a collaborative art making project where everybody made monsters together. There were 4 different monsters. And so then we've been really looking forward to today, which is our art opening, if you like, or a special reception for families. What a huge number of people showed up, and the principal. It's pretty impressive, I must say. It does show their cohesion and the collaborative nature of the school. And we're so pleased and honored to work with you. So thank you so much for all coming out. I hope everyone's having a good time tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. And thank you, West folks, for coming. It was awesome for you to share. For our next presentation, I'm proud to recognize our 2 outgoing board members. First, Mr. Ken Tomlinson. Ken, if you'd come up here. Mr. Tomlinson was elected to the board in November of 2015, and tonight will be his final board meeting during this term as a board member here in Cherry Hill. So Ken, on behalf of the nearly 1,700 staff members and more than 11,000 kids in the district, thank you for your service. Will you share a few words? No? You're good? Okay. And then Mrs. Judge, Kathy Judge. Mrs. Judge was appointed to the board in May of 2008 to fill an unexpired term. And tonight is her final board meeting serving during this term as a board member. So Mrs. Judge, thank you again on behalf of the nearly 1,700 employees and the more than 11,000 students and the more than 10 years that you spent on the Board of Education. Thank you for your service. Will you share a few words? You'd like to say it from the table? Absolutely.
So anybody that's attended any meetings, I always have prepared remarks. I can't go off the cuff. So here is my little statement, my farewell speech. I hope to make it through. So to my fellow board members, thank you for your support over the years. And I wish you only the best with your work moving forward. And I can hear my husband's eyes rolling. Yes, I'm getting emotional. I can hear it. I know how hard you all work and how hard you all will work for the kids of Cherry Hill, and I trust you with our children, and I trust you as a taxpayer. The few things that I'm proud of over the last several years with our work on the board, a tax increase of 2% or less over the last several years. This is no small feat for a district of our size. Improved collaboration between the district and the township, including the joint venture of the turf fields at both East and West. A visible and vocal presence with our legislators, with improvement of our state aid numbers this year. The hiring of our last 2 superintendents, which is the most important job of a board member. and especially our current superintendent, who was named a leader to learn from in Education Weekly a year ago in 2017, in December 2017. I stand by my words that Cherry Hill has the best of the best. At the top, in our administration, and in each building. We are very lucky to have such talented and passionate employees. And last but not least, I am so proud that the district will offer full-day kindergarten effective the fall of 2019. Speaking of the Cherry Hill administration, I'd like to thank all of you. You are some of the most dedicated and hardworking people I've ever encountered. We are very fortunate to have you here in Cherry Hill. I've asked some rather simple, simplistic questions over the years. You always made time for me and never rolled your eyes at me. Thank you. I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet, sorry. This is unusual, but I'm not done yet. To my family, Tom, you have made a great teammate with your support of this endeavor over the last 10 and a half years. My daughter surprised me by arriving home yesterday from New York City, especially to be here tonight. My son is also here this evening. To just give you a little bit of perspective, my son was 10 when I joined the board. He is now 21. I haven't changed a bit in the last 10 and a half years. My family was there when I was appointed on May 27th, 2008. Thank you for being here again tonight. I have special thanks for Wegmans for their prepared food section, and I need to apologize to my family for the frozen lasagna. My kids so benefited from the Cherry Hill school system. For that, I will always be grateful. For the new board members, as you know, Cherry Hill is a great town to live. My family moved here specifically because of the great reputation of the school district. My advice to all of you is to go to as many school board meetings as you can. Talk to other board members at your trainings. You'll learn a lot. Same thing with the conference in October. Attend. Go to as many seminars as you can. Talk to board members across the state between meetings. Have lunch with them. I was amazed over the years how board members would look to Cherry Hill to ask their questions, ask how we did certain things, etc. We are the 12th largest district in New Jersey. We have some flaws, but we do a lot right and are in the forefront. We are ahead of the curve often. Ask questions of our administration. They are the education experts. I will now get off my soapbox and just say, it has been an honor to serve this great community over the last 10 and a half years, and I only wish the best for the district and my fellow board members. To my fellow teammates who are also attending their last meeting this evening, please keep in touch. I am always game for a cup of coffee, or stronger, always game. And Ken, not to lecture or anything, but I do hope you consider running again in the future. You are just so stinking young, you know. So thank you. Thank you very much.
We're going to actually take a moment. I don't know if we jumped the gun or not, but I did want to take a moment for some of the other board members to speak. Did you want to? Okay. I did want to take a moment for some of the other board members to speak and talk about Kathy and Ken as they're outgoing. Start off with Lisa and then Carol.
Thank you. Ken and Kathy, it has been an absolute pleasure working with you over my past 4 years on the board. Ken, you bring a fresh, aka younger, perspective to the board. Your career experience has allowed you to view our decisions through a different lens, and I always appreciated and respected that. I will miss that perspective. Kathy, what can I say? I've been following you on boards for the past 15 years. You've been a mentor to me as a Bret Hart PTA president, zone PTA president, project graduation committee chair, and last but not least, board member. Thank you for your contributions to our children, our schools, our community, but most of all, thank you for encouraging me to get involved and for making me a better board member. We'll miss you. Thank you.
Okay, I will try to get through this. I wrote some things down because I might not get through this. Ken, you've only been on the board a short time, but you've listened and you've asked thoughtful questions, and that's a hallmark of a good board member. So thank you for your service and for what you've done. And as Kathy said, hope you'll stay engaged, and I hope you will reconsider for the future. Kathy, this is a little more difficult, and I'm going to have to not look at Kathy or I'm going to start crying. So, but I am speaking to you, Kath. We've worked together for 8 of the 10 years that she's been on the board, and we've grown to be good friends. I'm not sure everybody realizes the amount of work you do on the board. With the Camden County Educational Services Commission Board of Directors, you served on the New Jersey School Boards Association as a trainer for new board members. You're on the NJSBA Legislative Committee as an alternative for Camden County. You attained certification as a master board member through the NJSBA Board Member Training Academy. I believe you are the only one of us who has attained that rank so far. And you have also served as vice president of the Garden State Coalition of Schools. And that's outside of our district. Actually, right here in district, Kathy has chaired committees, served as board vice president and president, and you're almost always the first one to volunteer when the superintendent or the board president says that they need somebody to represent the board at a function, a meeting, an event, what have you. Kathy's almost always the first person to volunteer. What I think is your greatest legacy is your dedication to the children of our district. You attend student events all across the district at every school every year you've been on the board. You attended these for the only reason a board member should, because you care. Your presence showed appreciation and support, not only for our students, but the hard work of the teachers and our staff. I can tell you from what has been said to me that this has not gone unnoticed and is deeply appreciated. I'll miss working with you. Thank you.
First of all, I just wanted to say it's been my great pleasure to serve with both of you. You've demonstrated professionalism and grace throughout your time on the board, both of you have, and it's clear that your first consideration has always been I'm off again. That may have been me who was the loudest, but you always had really great comments. And I remember on more than one occasion when you'd speak, I'd be thinking, wow, that's a really great point or a question. Why didn't I think of that? Your keen insights and your expertise, especially as related to BNF matters, will be sorely missed by myself, certainly, and I'm sure the rest of the board. And Kathy, you have been amazingly dedicated to the board and the community. You have capably represented Cherry Hill and the district on numerous local, county, and statewide committees and organizations. You testified before the legislature numerous times, often traveling the length of the state to do so. For your tireless and dedicated service, we all owe you a debt of gratitude. On a personal note, throughout my time on the board, you were always willing to meet and talk if I had questions or needed advice. You were empathetic to the steep learning curve new members encounter and genuinely wanted to help each and every one of us be successful. You often reached out to me and other newbie board members to give us the benefit of your knowledge and your experience. And as former Bret Hart moms and neighbors, we've always been friendly over the years. However, since serving on the board together, I feel that you have become a true friend. And although we'll no longer be serving on the board together, I know we'll see each other often because I'm like a cat you feed. You can't get rid of me that easy anymore, my friend, so I'm sure I'll see you soon. Thank you.
Well, okay, I will echo with other board members to sing our praises to our outgoing board members. And as you know that I've been only serving on the board for 2 years, and well, I did not realize that Ken was not older than me, so definitely. But you actually behave almost like a very seasoned board member, so I was very impressive by your performance. So I really hope that you can run again. And then to Kathy, of course, over the 2 years, we have been in contact from time to time, both at board meetings as well as in private. And I of course, the very first time when we met and you offered some advice to me, and I understand that you also serve as trainer to other board members through the state. So, and more particular, of course, you have been not only serving our district, but also serving outside of our district and through the state and so on. So, for your dedication and your service and your time, of course. You have my high, I would say, admirations. Yeah, thank you, and very, very sad to see you go, and as well as Ken. The other point that I want to make is also that we love this district, and I think the district is great in the sense that we have so many people, just like today, who really care about this school district as well as the board. And so while we are sad to see our outgoing members to go, I will also use this opportunity to welcome our new members because they have run a very tough campaign and they won the votes, and I certainly warmly welcome them to be on board, and I look forward to working with you. Thank you.
So I'm also a newer board member, and I drew the lucky straw to sit next to Kathy and Ken, so whoever made the seating arrangements, thank you. It's been such an awesome experience, and I can't say enough about what Kathy and Ken have done for me personally as a newer member on the board. I think I call and text Kathy so much, so I am definitely going to miss that. The knowledge that you have shared with me has just been, I know, and I will definitely still be calling and tapping in. So I just definitely appreciate that, and thank you both for everything that you have done for me personally. And I know that, especially Kathy, the cards that you send me that extend outside of the board that I get in the mail on personal holidays and things are just also so nice, so I appreciate that as well. And I know that I will be calling you for a cup of coffee or something stronger very soon as well.
Thank you. And I too just really want to reiterate all of the things that have been said. I can say that I've been on the board probably a little bit longer than Kathy, but still I really look to Kathy as a great person for advice. I always like to run things past her when in many board meetings when I came out really frantic and wanting to do something crazy, I call Kathy and say, what about this? What do you think? And get some calming advice. So I just really will miss you being on the board, but I really appreciate all of what you've done for the board and all the heart that you've given. And also for Ken, I echo just all the great questions and the way you look at things, and just from your experience, you know, though you may be young physically, you know.
I'm 32 for the record.
and most of these old heads like myself. But definitely, I do really appreciate your, you know, the input, and I definitely think you should think about running again down the road. But I really appreciate both your contributions, and definitely will miss you. And just want to have that opportunity to say that. Thank you. Okay. Next, we'll turn it back to Dr. Malash for a final presentation on the board audit.
Yes, actually, I can turn it over to Mrs. Sugars, who's going to introduce Mr. Holt. So as Mrs. Sugars does the introduction, Mr. Holt can start walking up towards the microphone.
Yeah, this evening we have Mr. Mike Holt from Holman Frenier Allison with us to give us an update on our audit. Usually, at this point, we're approving our audit this evening because it is due to the state by December 5th. However, this year, unfortunately, we're still in a holding pattern. I'll let Mike talk about that a little bit. So we're not approving the audit tonight. We're getting a briefing on the audit tonight. And once the additional information that we need that is supposed to come from the state comes through, and Mike can finish the audit officially, then we will approve it at the following board meeting. Mr. Holt.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here this evening. What Ms. Sugars just said is correct. We have a new GASB 75 pronouncement that came out, and the information is not available yet through the Department of Treasury of the state of New Jersey. Once it is, they're giving us like a 4-week period to get that information together. And we're hoping February is what we're hearing is when the information is going to come out. So, Doc, keep your fingers crossed. I'm hoping, you know. So we did do a couple of presentations already on the audit report. I'm just going to give just an overview, a short overview. It's a very large document, the audit, when we go through this. You're going to see some great things that come out of the audit, though. We did do a finance committee meeting and an exit conference meeting already where we went through this in detail back in November and earlier December. And I'll just go over some financial highlights. If you have your reports with you, on page 13 is an independent auditor's report. This is a report given by our accounting firm, Holman Frenier Allison, on the financial condition and records of the district. An unmodified opinion has been rendered on the district's financial statements. That's the best opinion that can be rendered. All the assets, liabilities, fund balances, net positions, revenues, expenditures, note disclosures are fairly stated in accordance with government auditing standards as well as the State Department of Education. So if you're looking at this as like a report card, we're in a school district, right? Today, you guys did a great job. If you go a little further in the report and you look at Exhibit B1, Exhibit B1 on page 37 is the governmental fund balance sheet. The general fund that's there, the real important fund, that's your operational fund. You'll see there that the district had $27.7 million in total assets, small amount of liabilities at the end of the year at June 30th of $426,000, and you had total fund balances of $27.2 million at the end of the year. Of that, you've got the maximum that you can put away, which is 2%. If you remember, the state allows 2% for local school districts to put away. And you have that. You have that put away, which is great. You also have some excess surplus, $1,592,000 that will be used for tax relief in the 1920 budget that is in the process of being put together. So you guys really have some good numbers that are there, good working numbers going forward in the next year's budget. On page 38 is a statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in those fund balances. And there's some really good things that are there. You can see total revenues of $222 million for the year. That's up about 4.5% from the previous year. You also have your expenditures there that are $218,000 for the year. Sorry, $218 million for the year, and you were able to hold those expenditures to 2% increases for both instruction and support services, which is really good. We've seen the trend in districts this year; it's been higher than that. So, really good job by the finance department being able to hold those numbers down going forward. That's really good. There's a lot of other pages that are in the report. Again, we went through them in great detail with the finance committee a couple weeks ago. We did have a single audit. So when a district expends in excess of $750,000 for state and federal, it signals another audit, another level of audit, and you guys pass with flying colors on your federal and state single audit. So I really want to thank the board. I really want to thank the finance department for the courtesies that were extended to our staff when we were here. It's a lot of hours that are put into the audit when we go through this. No comments and recommendations. Great job. Continue with the success. Very nice. Okay, anybody have any questions or comments? No? Okay. All right. Happy holidays, okay? All right.
And now we're going to move to correspondence. Do we have any correspondence? Okay, Kathy and then Carol.
I have two things to report on this evening. One is the New Jersey School Board's dinner on November 29th. A couple weeks ago, Mrs. Matlack and I attended the joint Camden-Gloucester County dinner at Aletto's. This was my last school board's dinner, so I was able to say goodbye to a couple of my favorite school board employees. The topic was shared services, and Logan Township and Gibbsboro were in attendance with their superintendents. The board, the business administrator for Logan Township was there, the mayor of Logan Township was there, and they sat on a panel and discussed how they worked with shared services. It was very interesting. The topic was very interesting, but most of what they mentioned we do, and then some with Cherry Hill and with the district and the township. Did you have anything to add to that, Mrs. Matlack? Okay. Okay. So that's always a great thing to attend these dinners, these school board dinners. The other thing I wanted to report on is the Garden State Coalition of Schools. The next Garden State meeting is tomorrow, December 19th in East Brunswick. Senate President Steve Sweeney will be there to promote his Path to Progress report on the New Jersey fiscal reform. It's a 37-page document that you can easily access online. Because I'm still on the executive board of Garden State, we had a conference call about this meeting yesterday, so it should be a very interesting meeting tomorrow. I will remain VP on the executive board of Garden State through May of 2019, and I will provide a brief written report to Dr. Malash in the board leadership each month. And I do hope that somebody will continue to attend Garden State meetings after I'm finished in May of 2019. And as a plug, the January 30th meeting will be in East Brunswick, and we'll have John Mooney as the guest speaker. He is a journalist and founding editor of New Jersey Spotlight, which is an interesting online newspaper. He always has interesting things to share regarding education at the state level, and he's usually the moderator at the Garden State annual meeting in May with the legislators that are invited. And the February 27th meeting will be an evening meeting in Morristown. I don't know which building it's going to be in, but it's going to be in Morristown starting at 7 o'clock, so I hope to see some of you there. The plan is to invite local legislative delegation of Senator Troy Singleton, Assemblyman Herb Conway, and Assemblywoman Carol Murphy, all from District 7 in Burlington County, to that meeting. So that is my report. Any questions? Seeing none, back to you, Mr. Goodwin. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Judge. And now, Mrs. Matlack.
Thank you. I attended on behalf of the board the Cultural Proficiency, Equity, and Character Ed Committee meetings. There were two of them since our last board meeting, one on November 29th and one on December 13th. Those are always great, productive meetings to go to, and we've had students come to those meetings and share their perspective. So if any board member is interested in attending with me, please let me know. And it's always, like I said, a great perspective, especially when the students are there. And I'm also the board representative to our district DEAC committee, which Dr. Malash is the District Evaluation and Assessment Committee?
Advisory.
Advisory, I'm sorry. I always get that wrong. It is our teachers and administrators and a board member representative who meet several times a year. It originated with a requirement from the state for the teacher evaluation process. And they talk about, what the process entails and how it's going, and questions that they may have and things like that. And so I attended that meeting as well. And those, our district chose to continue those meetings. The group chose to continue those meetings, which is a great way for all of the schools to have contact with each other and share thoughts and ideas. So I'm the district, the board representative on that, and that meeting was on November 30th. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we're going to have our student representative report, and I believe we're going to start with Julia.
Good evening, esteemed members of the Board of Education. I have a brief update for all of you regarding recent events at Cherry Hill East. In the arts, the theater department had 4 amazing performances of the fall show, The Man Who Came to Dinner, on December 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. If you did not have a chance to see this production, make sure to stay tuned for the upcoming spring musical, Fiddler on the Roof, which will be performed in the spring. The instrumental music department has been preparing for their upcoming winter concert, which will take place tomorrow night at 7:30 at East. The vocal department has also been preparing for their winter concert, which will take place after break on January 10th, followed by the annual Coffee House concert hosted by the Thespian Society and the vocal department, which will take place on January 19th. The funds raised at Coffee House this year will support Project Semicolon. In athletics, the men's and women's swim teams, the girls' basketball team, and the boys' wrestling teams are just some of the teams that have started off their seasons with wins this month, and we are looking forward to a great winter season for all of our sports programs. In student government, East Student Government Association recently completed their annual toy drive in December. Each year, they raise money to buy toys to donate to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and this effort was successful again this year. SGA is also working with multiple clubs at East at the moment to plan for a day of service for Martin Luther King Day next month. With the bond, we appreciate Dr. Malash's attendance at a special town hall meeting that we hosted on December 3rd, where he answered students' questions about the bond referendum. This was a meeting open to any student who was interested in attending, so it was a really great opportunity to just inform the student population. And as I mentioned at last month's action meeting, Craig and I will be conducting 4 surveys of the student body this year. At the last meeting, I presented the data from the first survey that we sent out in the fall. For our second survey, based off of the results of the bond election, we're looking into asking questions of the student body pertaining to issues related to the bond referendum, and we want to hear what changes students would like to see in our schools and in the bond. As students, we ask that all adults consider our voices and our experiences as we take these steps for the future of our school district. Thank you for listening. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll have Sonia from West.
Good evening. I have prepared a report on some recent happenings from the West community. In athletics news, tonight I would like to congratulate the following all-conference players from various West athletic department teams: Isabella Sylvester from the field hockey team, Ian Sachs, Kylie Neal, Joseph Mardino, and Zach Bruno from the boys soccer team. Mardino and Bruno are also all South Jersey players. Samantha Santos, Olivia Gallardo, and Michaela Aguardo from the girls soccer team. Gallardo and Aguardo are also all South Jersey players. Nick Jester, Massimo Sullivan, Dorian Davis, Johnny Iannucci, Carlos Gomez, and Jeff Morris from the football team. Iannucci is also an all South Jersey player. Also, congratulations to the West wrestling team, who took the overall team title at the Garden State Classic Championship on December 15th. And on behalf of the West community, I would like to extend another huge thank you to the men's swim team at Eastern Regional, who wore purple at a meet on December 7th to show support for the West swim team's senior captain, Matt Stankus. Our shared commitment to community is the source of our greatest strength. In performing arts news, the West vocal and instrumental music departments put on a successful combined winter concert this past Thursday, December 13th. Excellent work to all of the performers, and the West community looks forward to your collaboration on the Broadway Night 2019 production. The theme for this year's production is 21st Century Disney. And congratulations to Stephen Douglas and Sarah Davidson on being selected to the All South Jersey Band, and to Emma Jones on being selected for the All South Jersey Orchestra. Also, congratulations to West seniors Britton Fletcher and Bree Leftwich on a successful performance in the South Jersey Ballet production of The Nutcracker. The African American Culture Clubs at East and West will be presenting their second annual Black History Celebration on February 23rd, 2019. The show is titled A Seat at the Table, A History of Firsts. Rehearsals will begin tomorrow, Wednesday, December 19th, in the Old Auditorium at West. Elementary and middle school students are welcomed and encouraged to participate in this event as well. And in miscellaneous news, the dodgeball tournament hosted by the National Honor Society raised over $300 for the Cherry Hill Food Pantry. Congratulations to the tournament champion team, I Ain't Foldin'. And continuing a tradition that is over 20 years old, the Spanish Heritage classes, Spanish 5A and 5AP classes, and Mrs. Garrity's Life Skills class at West have collected new toys and clothes for children at the Mi Casita Bilingual Daycare Center in Camden. Project Lit has also collected over 100 children's books, enough to give one to each child and a set of books for each classroom at the center. In addition, a Spanish Heritage student who works at the Discovery Museum arranged for each child to receive a free pass to go to the museum. The students are currently preparing to take a trip to the daycare center, where some will dress up as Santa and his elves, and others will help the children pick out toys and play with them. Thank you for listening. Are there any questions? Thank you again.
Thank you. A lot of great stuff going on at West and East. Next, we are going to have our first public comment. We have two opportunities for the public to speak this evening. The first public comment will be for any items on the agenda and only items on the agenda. There will be another public comment for any other topic at the end of the meeting. There is no item on the agenda pertaining to referendum. Therefore, the board will not be taking public comment on the agenda at during the first public comment session, but there will be plenty of opportunity to comment during the second comment session. This will allow the board to have an opportunity to discuss in strategic planning that section of the meeting. If you'd like to speak, please identify the agenda item you're speaking to. Speak in the microphone clearly and state your name and address. Each speaker will be given a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. The timer will light with green at the beginning of the 3 minutes. When there are 30 seconds left, the timer will turn yellow, and when the time will be red when your time is up. Please conclude your comments. Any opportunity, anyone to speak?
Hello, everyone. Eleanor Stoffman, 4401 Sagemore Drive. It's not literally on the agenda, but since you did already recognize our school board members, I thought I would take this opportunity at the beginning to thank Ken Tomlinson for his service. It was a pleasure meeting you at our times together, and I thank you for your service. For Kathy, as a representative of the Cherry Hill Education Foundation, and on behalf of the students of the Cherry Hill Public Schools and the Cherry Hill Education Foundation, we recognize Kathy Judge for many years of dedication, generosity, and loyalty to the Cherry Hill Public Schools and the Cherry Hill Education Foundation. Not only has she represented Cherry Hill and our town in Camden County and our state, but she's also supported the foundation by being an active member in our golf tournament and even dancing 2 times in Dancing with the Cherry Hill Stars.
You're being generous that was dancing, but okay.
So on behalf of the whole organization, we want to give you this to hang in your room, in your office, and as a personal note, because we have become such personal friends, these are flowers for your table for your holiday.
Hello. I know you said there was nothing on the, that's why I'm not saying, my name is Beth Becker, 17 Dunbarton Road. On on page 21, there's a discussion item about the bond referendum vote. So I was wondering why this public comment section we weren't able to speak on the bond.
Well, actually, we were looking for items on the action, but you will be able to speak on the bond in the second public session.
Before your discussion or after?
After, there's no action items that we're taking. There's no action being taken on the bond tonight.
Okay.
There's no action item, at least right at this point in time. So any discussion on the bond can come in the second.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
no actions.
Pat McCargo, 991 Kingston Drive. I'm following suit with Eleanor over there because I really consider it as part of an action tonight in terms of Kathy and Ken, and wanted to thank them both for their service and to wish them well in their endeavors and hope that we will still see your faces around and about in Cherry Hill. And I have to say this particularly to Kathy, because when Kathy first ran the first time after her appointment, someone asked me if I would come to a meeting to talk to some prospective candidates. I don't know if you remember this. And I thought to myself, well, that sounds pretty interesting. So I did go. But what I'd like to say about Kathy is that from the beginning, conversations, she was always available. I would sometimes call Kathy and say, I need to ask you a question. And I felt that those questions would be met with a listening ear and sincere ear. And we didn't always agree, but we were always agreeable. Kathy took her time, and along with Carol Matlack, and would often come to the Civic Association events, particularly our scholarship endeavors. You could always find them there. And one thing I will say to every board member here tonight is that being the wife of a past board member, I know the hours you put in. I know that you don't just sit here on meeting nights. I know you're at PTA meetings, you're out in the community. So I thank each and every one of you who put your name up to participate in this action. This year I've seen a side of this township that I'm not particularly fond of, but that's okay, because we'll move on. And I'll be here. And people, when Kathy first came on the board, I didn't have a child in this district. All of my children had graduated. My oldest grandson was done. Then came my little ones, and people say to me, why are you still here? I think they wanted me to go away. But I will say this to you now, and to the oncoming board members. I might not be here at every meeting, but you better believe that I'm still watching and I'm still listening. And I will hold each and every one accountable. At the end of the day, the most important thing for us to remember is that we all are family. We all have children or grandchildren or nieces and nephews. And I hope that you will continue to do the work that you do and follow the dedication that Kathy and Ken have shown over the years, and particularly Kathy. And Kathy, you know, I still hope that we'll have coffee from every now and then, and a brunch or whatever it might be, because I would still like to have those conversations.
I'm going to have
And
a
I
lot
hope I
of
can pick
time
those
in
others.
January.
So I wish you all well, and good luck, Ken and Kathy.
Elliot Roth, 1809 Morris Place. I've also had to write this out. I did write this before I knew that Barry wasn't going to be here, but I do want to recognize that Barry also is leaving the board. Tonight we're saying goodbye to 3 members of the board, representing approximately 19 years of service to Cherry Hill. These 3 people have devoted countless hours to ensure that our schools are well run and maintained at the high level demanded by our township residents. I would like to personally thank them for their dedication and service. Ken Tomlinson joined the board 3 years ago as the youngest member. See the theme here, Ken? He brought the perspective of having children in each level of our schools. In addition to his responsibilities at work helping to grow a business, his activities at his church, and his other community organizations, he found the time to become a valuable contributing member of the board. Ken, you're still young, and hopefully you'll have many more years of community activism. Thank you for your service. Barry's not here, but Dr. Barry Dickinson has served 2 3-year terms on the board, including 1 year as vice president and 2 years as president. Barry's background in education and educational leadership has been invaluable to the board. Board membership requires many hours of work, and serving in a leadership position exponentially increases those hours. And Barry, in absentia, thank you for your service. I believe that Kathy Judge has been on the board for 27 years. I'm sorry. What I meant to say, that in the 3+ terms on the board, Kathy has performed about 27 years worth of service. In addition to serving 2 years as vice president and 2 years as president of the board, Kathy has served on every standing committee and every ad hoc committee. She has represented Cherry Hill at statewide boards, testified at hearings in Trenton, and personally lobbied for Cherry Hill with our legislative representatives. She's attended hundreds of meetings, presentations, exhibits, and shows at our schools. She has helped other school board members perform their duties better and has become a certified school board instructor. Got the name wrong, sorry. Kathy has been a valued counsel to many school administrators and several superintendents. And on a more personal note, she is one of the few people that gets my sense of humor. Kathy is known by many people in the Cherry Hill community and is universally liked and respected. I'm sure with all the spare time that Kathy will have, all those coffees notwithstanding, she will find other avenues to serve our community. Kathy, thank you for your service. As the newly constituted board takes over in a few days, they have a substantial task ahead of them. I hope they've been watching and learning from all of those that have come before them. Happy holidays to all.
Ann Einhorn, 1017 Edgemore Road. I'm not going to sing. That would clear the room, Kathy. I just want to thank you for everything that you have done. Ken, I don't know you as well. Thank you for the 3 years. There will be many other opportunities in the years to come, I'm sure. But for Kathy, I want to thank you for the respect to the board and the role of a board member that you have shown this community for a very long time. Your responsible actions, your integrity, your dedication, and your service certainly have not gone unnoticed by me. I wish things could have been different in many, many ways over the years. But I only wish you well, because the one thing we can't give you back is the time that you have spent. And I have never in 30 years of living here seen a board member as dedicated as you. I hope future generations of board members can take some pages from the book that you have written about being a board member and play them forward. I'm going to miss you. But Garden State Coalition is going to miss you most, and all the other state, county, and local boards that you have served on. I don't know who's going to replace you in that, guys, but I thank you. And I also thank the family who apparently left to go home to that frozen lasagna that you cooked this evening. All right? But I thank all of you for what you do, because as you know, I have been there, and it is a very tough road. And I hope the road's not as potholed as it seems to have been in recent years, or the last year. So good luck to all of us in the Cherry Hill community, but mostly good luck to the both of you. Thank you.
Yoni Yaris, 422 Cherry Hill Boulevard. Was going to do this at the end, but it looks like it's the Pick on Ken and Kathy show now. I'll start with Ken. You and I just got to know each other relatively recently. You've become someone who personally inspires me with your work, both in the business world and bringing this professionalism and outside world that doesn't exist in the school world. You've brought incredible insight. It's not fun to serve on the building and grounds committee. Those aren't fun topics. But you've brought incredible insight, talked about new technology, things that aren't usually exposed in the board level because people don't know about them. It's not generally the people who choose to run and sit behind these chairs. So thank you for doing that. As someone who's just slightly younger than you, you're an inspiration to me. We'll be stuck together at Kilmer for many more years. So I look forward to getting to know you better as now fellow Kilmer parents, as you get to have a little bit more free time on your hands. to Kathy, there's only so much I can say. It's a lot of it's been said. You've become a friend, a mentor, someone I've gone to for advice on a multitude of occasions. I've seen you at multiple tough board meetings. You have been so calm, respectful, listening, so much of the core values we talk about within the district. You are the epitome of them. I don't know what it's going to be like sitting here in January not seeing you up there. You have this insight. You serve on the hard committees, the not fun ones, that the tough discussions take place. I hope that you will come join us on something else within the district, be it cultural proficiency, the foundation, something else where your voice is needed, and institutional memory and everything else. Come join us on this side. That is comfy seats.
I'm going to take a little break, but you may see me. You may see me.
So thank you from the bottom of my heart. As someone who's been here as a student, now as a parent of children, I feel better because people like you have served on the board.
Anyone else? Okay, so we're going to end our first public comment, and I'm going to turn it to Dr. Malash for comments before we get into our action agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. I do just have brief comments tonight, because I know we have a lot more to discuss during the course of the evening. I just want to start by thanking the ladies from High School East and from High School West for their presentations. Again, the updates that you all provide about the experiences and what's going on in the schools is incredibly important. Again, it's the highlight for me is being out in the buildings, having the opportunity to see you, to meet with other students. And I've said this in years past, and certainly is true today. When I have the opportunity to meet, and the ladies run meetings, they certainly run much more efficient meetings at times with the kids than I ever would. So I'm grateful for what they put together. A couple of highlights. The girls talked about some of the things that have gone on athletically. We heard a little bit about the theater and the music program. I mentioned the musicals that are coming up in the spring. And I've said this over the last couple of months as I've had the opportunity to speak with folks. If you have not yet checked, make sure you go on the district website and look at the upcoming calendar of activities and events and plan to attend the musicals at both of the high schools and at all three of the middle schools. For sure at the high schools, the shows that you're going to see at East and at West will rival driving across the bridge into Philadelphia and buying a ticket in terms of the quality. And I would tell you the shows at the three middle schools are the same. So go out and see the shows, go and see the concerts, support the athletic events that go on at each of the levels that go through. Winter is a great time for athletic events, especially it's starting a little bit colder. So there's lots of athletic events that are coming up. A highlight over winter break on Friday, next Friday when we are closed, is the boys East-West basketball game, which I believe is at 11:30 over at High School West. Always a fun event with the kids from both high schools that are out there. I'm sure there'll be a lot of kids from both schools. So I encourage folks, if you're looking for something to do next Friday, head over to High School West for the game. A special thank you to the three outgoing board members, to Ken, to Kathy, and to Barry. Unfortunately, Barry is ill. He did contact us earlier today and is unable to be here tonight. I'm grateful for your service, regardless of the number of years, for the dedication that you put through. One of the things that when we revised our mission statement nearly 2 years ago now, one of the things that always sticks with me is that when we work with the children, when we work with people in the district, that we want people to be able to thrive in an ever-changing world and make it a better place for all. Your dedication, your selfless time, giving of your time to be here, because again, choosing to be a board member and participate in the regular meetings we have during the course of each month, as well as the activities during the day in the schools and on weekends and in the evenings. Choosing to do that means that you're choosing not to be someplace else. So I'm grateful because in your own way, the impact that you have done has made our world and our piece of the world better, and certainly has made it better for the kids that are in our district. So I'm grateful to your service. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to be over at the Crown Plaza. It was the annual FOP holiday party. Cherry Hill FOP Lodge has sponsored the holiday party for more than 30 years. I can tell you, when I was a student at West, I participated as a student. My four girls have all participated. It's a highlight for all of us to be able to go over there and to see the wonderful job. And it truly is an event that brings the kids from High School East and West together to put on this incredible party for kids from all over South Jersey with the support of the police department. Just a wonderful day. So truly a highlight every year. One of the other special highlights that just started this year is that the NJSIAA, which is the governing body for interscholastic sports in New Jersey, this is the first year they're officially recognizing female wrestling at the high school level And we have young ladies at both high schools who are incredibly successful in the first weekend of competition this past weekend. So the young ladies at our high schools that are competing and the young ladies in the elementary schools and middle schools, wrestling as an interscholastic sport is an option in New Jersey, and our young ladies are thriving. So something to keep in mind as you are out there. Kathy, thank you for the information. We will look forward to having people on February 27th at the Garden State Coalition meeting in Moorestown. Again, the Garden State Coalition of Schools is a statewide organization. We hosted a meeting here in Cherry Hill a year ago. Moorestown, which is another one of the member schools or member districts, is hosting it in February, so we'll encourage people to be out and to attend the meeting. So thank you. I will have more comments later in the evening. Mr. Goodwin.
Okay, thank you. And now we're going to move into our action agenda. And first up, we're going to have Mrs. Seidel. Would you please move the items for curriculum and instruction?
I will. Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. The superintendent recommends and I move the following. Number 1, approval of attendance at conferences and workshops for the 2018-2019 school year. Number 2, approval of extended school year program, ESY 2019. Number 3, approval of Title I Summer Academy 2019. Number 4, approval of services contract with New Jersey Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired 2018-19. Number 5, approval of out-of-district student placements for 2018-2019 school year. And you all have a yellow sheet in front of you with an addition of item 6, approval of special education settlement agreements. Do I have a second? Mrs. Matlack, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Mr. Goodwin.
Ms. Sugars.
Seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
Too many.
Somebody.
Mr. Goodwin.
Yes.
Mrs. Judge.
Yes to all.
Yes.
Yes to all.
Yes to all.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Seidel. And next up, Mr. Tomlinson, would you move the B&F items?
Yes, I will. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following. Number 1, financial reports. Number 2, resolution for the award of transportation. Number 3, approval of license agreement for the Leah Core Center, Graduation High School East, June 20th, 2019. Number 4, approval of license agreement for the Leah Core Center, Graduation High School West, June 20th, 2019. Number 5, approval of non-public school technology plan. And number 6, acceptance of donations. Can I have a second, please? Mrs. Seidel, any questions? Yes.
Well, I have a question for item 5. Could you do some explanation why this CATS JCC is receiving or is giving iPads and so on? So, thank you.
Mrs. Sugars, I'll leave you to.
So we are a pass-through, I would call it, for non-public funds. So the state issues non-public funds to some of our non-public schools that are in our area. And we are the keeper of those funds. And part of the requirements of the technology funds is that the schools must submit their technology plan and the district must approve the technology plan. It doesn't have to be a large, complicated plan, but it still has to be board approved before that district can use the money towards the items that they want to.
Can you tell us how much it is?
Off the top of my head, I'm sorry, I don't know. It's generally, for our technology funds, I would say anywhere between 2 to 10,000, Mrs. Ridgway. $100 a student, so it depends on the number of students that they have at the school.
Does anyone else have any other questions? All right, back to you, Mrs. Sugars.
Mr. Goodwin.
Yes.
Mrs. Judge.
Yes to all.
Mrs. Matlack.
Yes.
Mrs. Seidel.
Yes.
Mrs. Scarpellino.
Yes to all.
Mrs. Schultz.
I need to abstain to Beata Home Health on the bill list. Yes to the rest.
Mr. Tomlinson.
I need to abstain from Bancroft NeuroHealth on the bill list. Yes to the remainder.
Dr. Wong.
Yes.
Dr. Dickinson. Oh, sorry, Dr. Dickinson isn't here. I apologize.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tomlinson. Next up, we have Human Resources and Negotiations. Mrs. Judge, will you please move those items?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Goodwin. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following. Number 1, termination of employment certificated. Number 2, termination of employment non-certificated. Number 3, appointment certificated. Number 4, appointments non-certificated. Number 5, leaves of absence certificated. Number 6, leaves of absence non-certificated. Number 7, assignment salary change non-certificated. And number 8, other compensation certificated. Do I have a second? Mrs. Matlack. Any questions? Seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
Mr. Goodwin.
Yes.
Mrs. Judge.
Yes to all.
Yes.
Yes to all.
Yes to all.
Yes.
Yes to all.
I will abstain from item 3 involving Rowan University, and yes to the remainder.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Judge. Next, we have policy and legislation, and I will ask Mrs. Scarpellino to move those items.
Certainly, Mr. Dickinson. Excuse me, Mr. Good. It's one of those nights. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following. Number 1, waiver of regulation 2340 field trips. Number 2, approval of harassment, intimidation, bullying investigation decisions. Do I have a second? Mrs. Judge, are there any questions? Seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
Mr. Goodwin.
Yes.
Mrs. Judge.
Yes.
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 Okay, we don't have any items for strategic planning in terms of any action items, but next we do want to have some discussion, and I'm going to turn that over to Mrs. Matlack to talk about strategic planning.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. Last Tuesday, December 11th, our bond referendum was put to a vote before the community. There were 3 proposals presented to address security, infrastructure needs, and the instructional community spaces in our buildings. All 3 proposals were defeated. As we prepare to discuss the next steps after the defeat of the proposals, we need to consider the following. The process of developing our bond referendum was a long one that has been discussed since I came on the board 8 years ago. The work of developing the bond we put up for a vote on December 11th began in earnest more than 2.5 years ago. The bond was developed in an efficient and cost-responsible manner to provide the greatest positive impact on our school facilities to most benefit our children and community. During the past 3 years, the Board of Education has adopted sequential board goals that led the district to the referendum vote. The development of these goals, sequential goals, publicly indicated the path that the Board of Education and the school district were traveling, culminating in the bond referendum vote as the previous outstanding debt from the 1999 bond referendum was retired. We, the Board of Education, and the school district must learn from this defeat as we move forward. We have 3 options to consider that will frame our board discussion tonight. The first option is to put the same three proposals out for a vote on March 12th. The second option is to modify the proposals by removing entire schools from the project list. The referendum questions themselves are not able to simply be modified. The project applications submitted to the New Jersey Department of Education in April and subsequently approved in August are building specific, with multiple projects listed for each building. The security, infrastructure, instructional community spaces projects, based upon their impact and urgency, were placed into the three separate proposals. We are unable to simply remove individual projects from the list without removing the entire building. Our third option is to table the discussion and engage the community in additional discussion about the development of a new referendum with a future date, so that each board member has the opportunity to share his or her thoughts uninterrupted. We will begin our discussion by going around the board table so each can speak in turn. After each board member has spoken, I will ask our student representatives if they have anything that they would like to share. Then I will open our discussion for board members to comment or ask questions of their colleagues. As chair of the Board Strategic Planning Committee, I will begin the discussion by sharing my thoughts on next steps and moving forward. I will then recognize each board member in turn, starting to my right. So because I needed to gather my thoughts, I wrote them down. I also emailed the board members ahead of time about our process tonight, so that they had the opportunity to gather their thoughts and write them down if they so choose to. So I will read to you what I've written. I have been chair of the Strategic Planning Committee for the past 2 years. I have served as a member of the committee for 5 years. The bond we put forth on Tuesday, December 11th, asking for $210 million to do the bulk of much-needed building work immediately, was defeated. Personally, I am not in favor of pursuing either of the first two options I laid out for our discussion tonight. For me, removing entire school buildings from the current proposals is not acceptable. Excuse me. We have children and staff in each of our schools, and all deserve to benefit from building improvements, not just some. To put the same questions out for a vote is also not acceptable to me. The vote was not close, and those that voted were well informed. What I am in favor of doing is tabling this discussion until the new year. And if we do decide to table our discussion until the new year, I'd like to propose, as a part of that, bringing the community together in a more formal way with us. When we reconvene in January, we can discuss what, When we reconvene in January, we can discuss what that would look like. We can define purpose and goal in conjunction with the board and the administrative work that will continue. We now have some very engaged community members, some who are passionately supportive of the bond, and some who are equally opposed to it. Let's all take a step back from the negativity that has cropped up in our community and work together on these issues. Dr. Smith, who is our new assistant superintendent, recently made me recall why I became a board member, why I chose to do this. It was just after we received the referendum results. The essence of what he said was, 11,000 smiling faces will be here tomorrow morning, and they are why we are here. We will move forward. So, excuse me, I believe we should table the discussion until the new year. I believe we need to bring the community in and develop consensus on a new bond to put that forth, something we can all support. So now I will pass it on to Mr. Goodwin to share his thoughts on our next steps.
Okay. One of the things that I know that for my wife and my family, we moved to Cherry Hill because of the schools and because of the school district and because of the reputation that this school district had. And that's one of the primary reasons we moved, and I believe many of the people that live in this community moved here because of the schools. And we know where our schools are, and we know the physical shape our schools are in. And definitely we need to move forward with correcting that problem. But I also agree with Mrs. Matlack that we need to make sure that as we move forward, that we bring the community in. I think there's been attempts, but we have to be focused in this effort, because I know I wasn't necessarily a part of it, but I know there was other community efforts that have gone on where they made all kinds of recommendations and nothing happened. I'm glad that we at least tried to make something happen, but now that hopefully we have more engaged people, that we can take this opportunity to really bring everyone in, because I don't believe anyone wants to see our schools physically dilapidated or whatever. I believe everyone wants to see the best environment for our kids, the best environment for our staff. So I believe that's what the community wants. And so we have to figure out how do we accomplish that as a group, so that when we go forward again, it's going to be something where everyone will be excited about the opportunity to really improve our schools and help our schools and our students and staff be in an environment that really will help them to learn. So I too agree with Mrs. Matlack on the third option, because we want to make sure we provide the best environment for all of our students.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. Mrs. Judge, would you like to share your thoughts?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Matlack. So I am not in favor of a March vote with the same 3 questions. My suggestion is to engage the community, especially those who vocally suppose the no vote, and find out what the issues were with the current 3 questions. What comes to mind when I was thinking about this were the meetings that were held when IB was on the table, long before I was even a board member, with Dr. Campbell as superintendent. The meetings I attended when that was under discussion had to have had at least 50 community members, if not more, in attendance at those meetings. So my hope is that people would express their concerns over the bond at these community gatherings, rather than on social media. The work in our 19 buildings must be done. There is very little fat in our normal operating budget. As we know, the majority of what we do is hire teachers to teach our children. Last time I asked about this, it was about 83% of our budget, which includes salaries and benefits. We do not have employees to RIF, which is reduction in force. We don't have extra employees to do that. We do not have too many administrators. If we do a reduction in force, I suspect that means larger class sizes. And we still have asbestos abatement and roofs to fix. Before I end, I'd just like to thank the administration for their hard work. You worked tirelessly over the last several months, and actually it was years on this. It did not go unnoticed. So I'm also in favor of tabling, regrouping in January, and I'll be a community member at at least one of those. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Judge. Mr. Tomlinson.
I didn't prepare anything ahead of time, but what I've been thinking about all day around this is, I agree with what's been said so far about going back and not rushing into putting those questions on a ballot again. But I worry about time. I've only been on the board for 3 years, and the entire 3 years we've talked about nothing but the bond going forward. My first non-organizational meeting was a weekend retreat talking about the future and what we were building in the future. And so I worry about going back 3 years, because in those 3 years, my children have gone from, most of them have gone from elementary to middle school, and I've even added a whole nother child into the district that'll be enrolled next year. So a number of, a lot of things have happened in that short time frame, and I just worry about waiting longer and longer. And even with, the state response, you mentioned yourself, we submitted everything April of this year, and it wasn't until August that we heard back, and just the stringent rules and the planning around that. The other thing I worry about is, with the current bond expiring, the next time this bond goes out, you're asking people to stomach, if it was still 3 questions, you're asking them for 4 tax increases in 1 year. And that's going to be a really tough challenge to overcome. So I, wish the board luck. I will definitely be involved on the other side of the table, and excited to continue adding my expertise in, my years of real estate investing and building multiple projects. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tomlinson, and thank you for stating those concerns. They are a consideration moving forward, absolutely. And Mrs. Schultz, your turn.
So when reviewing the options regarding the next steps for the bond, my recommendation would also be to table the discussion at the moment and work to engage the community in additional discussion, both about the development with a future date. For the record, I fully supported the referendum, and I would be remiss to not publicly recognize the hours of work put into this project by Dr. Malash and Lynn Sugars. I would also like to thank the many staff that participated at the 100+ community engagement sessions that were held over the last few years in preparation for the referendum. If we as a board decide to rework the referendum, I truly hope that we have more participation in person at the public meetings where we can have face-to-face discussions instead of reading opinions online where information may not be presented correctly. It's my hope that by re-engaging the public in future discussions, we can put forward a new referendum which comes from a place of compromise. I am eagerly looking forward to hearing specific suggestions and details from the people who voted both for and against the referendum, so that we can move forward together with a common goal of improving our schools for our children, our teachers, our administrators, and our community. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Schultz. And Dr. Wong.
Well, I understand many people are going to talk after us, and so I will be brief. And again, I will say the same thing, that I would choose the third option, that is to table the bond question for further discussion and for further and more, I would say, active engagement with the community. I think this is a good approach. From what I hear from the community is that we do need a lot of works on our schools to improve its physical facilities. And that's the consensus, and we should build on the consensus. And then we will work on a new bond that will satisfy the needs that we have. And the second thing that I also, of course, heard from the other board members as well, that for the last maybe say even 8 years or 4 years or 3 years, that we have been working mainly focusing on this bond. And since I'm on the board, I have been also advocating another improvement, that is the academic improvement. So that means more specific, we really should improve our school rankings. Because for the newcomers to come to this community, they can hear from the words of mouth, that is, Cherry Hill has great schools. But on the other hand, in this online age, many parents may not have time to visit our schools, but they will take a look at our rankings. And I understand that for the last 3 or 4 years, our rankings somewhat fluctuated, if not declined. So I think, since I'm now on the C&I committee, I really hope that I can play a role as an educator to improve our school rankings. Because when I look at, I took some preliminary look at those ranking criteria. And what I found was that it's not like we are comparing say, the students at Rowan with the students at Harvard or Princeton. I mean, those ranking criteria really took considerations of the social demographic factors. That is, if the family means is lower than in certain school, versus the other school, then the ranking criteria will be also adjusted. So in that sense, that we should really work on both. All the 19 schools. And the last thing I want to make is how to improve the communications. Again, I want to emphasize this. We are in a changing time, and the social media has been playing a major role. And since I'm on the board, of course, I haven't been very active on Facebook, but I have been reading Facebook messages, and I found that some of the information needs to be immediately addressed, or at least by the board or by the leaders of the board. That is, some correct information should be looked at our school district. I mean, we have an immediate response, because I understand that if we don't do that, and the community will think that we are kind of arrogant, and we are like, not responsive. So I think it's for the next time around, when we design the bond, I would really hope that more people from the community will voice their concerns, their interest, and we are going to work with you as more effectively as before. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wong. Mrs. Scarpolino.
Yes, I also don't think that options 1 or 2 are really viable. I don't, if perhaps the loss for proposal 1 in particular had been closer, maybe it would have made sense to put that back up, but spend more time explaining what exactly that proposal entailed. But the loss, I think, was too great. And I also think the second option, I would not want to see whole schools removed from the referendum. All our schools need the security updates that are in that bond. All our schools have critical repairs that need to be done, so I don't see how that'd be possible to pick and choose. So I think the only viable option is also the third one, that we would need to table the discussion and work to engage the community in additional discussions in the hopes of developing a new bond referendum in the new year. I do have to agree that although I think Dr. Malash and the administration worked tirelessly, in fact, I don't know how Dr. Malash managed to do all the meetings that he has done. And he always had the information. He was happy to answer every single question that anyone had. But unfortunately, in today's world, when only 20 people are showing up looking for the answers, it's hard to decimate that much information. And I think something like 80% of Americans get their news from Facebook now. So the fact that they're getting their hard news, let alone any other kind of news from Facebook, it's just a reality that we have to deal with. Because I do believe that there was a great deal of discussion online. That's how people talk these days. But there was also a lot of misinformation out there and wrong information out there that needs to be addressed. Because if it doesn't, it becomes fact. So I think that is something we have to consider moving forward. I also think that when we do need to engage the community, but I think we need to all understand that we are a very large and diverse community, and we all have our opinions on what needs to be done, and we're not going to be able to do everything we want, and we're certainly not going to be able to make everyone happy. And we have to understand and keep in mind that we cannot let the perfect be the enemy of the good. The work has to be done. The buildings need these repairs. The roof still needs to be done. The asbestos needs to be abated. Our children deserve to have better facilities to learn in. And so I urge everyone to remember, nothing can be perfect, but the perfect should not be the enemy of the good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Scarpolino. And Mrs. Seidel.
Thank you. Like all of my colleagues before me, I also recommend that we table the current bond proposals and continue to engage the community in further discussion. I want to thank administration and our business associates for, John, are you up? Yes, for all your hard work that went into this project. While I don't recommend that we move forward right now, this work was not in vain. These safety, security, instructional, and infrastructure projects must happen. The question is, how do we pay for these needs? In what order do we complete the projects? And what changes to the project lists are necessary for the community to support a future referendum? Like all of you, I've attended referendum meetings, spoken with friends, neighbors, constituents, received countless emails, and reviewed social media posts. I've spent the last week reflecting, trying to come up with a list of why the community couldn't vote yes. At the end of the day, I don't have one concise list of reasons why the community voted no, but in my opinion, there are a few key recurring themes that I believe we should consider when determining our next steps. I must, like my colleagues to the left, thank Dr. Malash and administration for the over 100 community meetings and the website chock full of information. However, while our code of ethics makes it difficult for us to personally engage in a meaningful way on social media, we must come up with a strategy to communicate as a board via social media going forward. For my colleagues here, you know that this is sort of a drum that I beat all of the time. This is the space where a large portion of our community asks their questions, raises their concerns, and offers their suggestions. It's where our students, whose voice is so important, reside. We live in a world of instant gratification where questions are immediately answered. Social media has become the new town hall meeting. I didn't see one question raised online that we as a board didn't have the answer to. We just weren't fast enough to get the right information out there as quickly as needed. And as a result, our responses were often dismissed or overshadowed. Many community members have expressed concerns that we as a board are not putting as much effort into securing our fair share as we did in promoting the bond. I've also heard concerns that a large bond gives off the impression that we have given up fighting for our fair share. I know how much work the board and administration has put into this fair funding fight over the years. The parent-led Fair Funding Committee has also put a tremendous amount of effort into this fight and helped get much-needed traction over the last few years. It is our obligation to make sure that we are all working together for the same goal and that we have visibility into and support each other's efforts. When we compiled the project list over the past couple years, it didn't necessarily make financial sense to consider new construction. However, I believe our future discussion should not rule this possibility out at this point. This conversation is going to bring up an entirely new set of concerns about neighborhood schools, equity, location, etc. But given the feedback I've heard over the past few months, I believe it's a conversation we should have with our community. As a board, we've discussed other ways to fund some of our needs. I suggest that we restart some of those previous conversations about a grant writer and also review some of our policies regarding fundraising and naming rights. We are fortunate to live in a diverse, involved, and generous community. I have no doubt that we can be successful in this regard with a well thought out and deliberate plan. While there are many other reasons why the community supported or did not support the bond referendum, these are just a few of the items that will help guide me and frame my future discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Seidel. And now I would like to ask our board representatives if they have anything that they would like to share with us. We'll start with Sonia from West.
I didn't have any remarks prepared for today, but I just wanted to recall a story that actually just happened today in one of my classes near the end, once we had finished our lesson. One of the students had asked about the bond. She had heard the news about the results of the election and was just sort of confused as to what the content of the referendum was all about. So my teacher took some time to just explain the general, this is a referendum for general infrastructure repairs and proposals for projects. And the discussion that we had between the students, I thought was very interesting. I learned a lot of things just about the community dynamic around the bond and people's opinions about projects and costs that I'd never really heard before. One of the students said that she had attended one of the sessions that we had organized for any students who were interested in learning more about the bond, one of these sort of town hall kind of gatherings. And she mentioned that at that meeting, they had gone off topic, not really talking so much about the projects as other issues surrounding the school community, that no one seemed to really have an interest in the projects that were going to be put forth in this bond, that they didn't seem to really have any vested interest in learning more about the details that were going into these projects, and I actually found that pretty surprising. And I wonder if just that general attitude is one of the reasons why just general turnout in this community was reportedly so low on this past Tuesday when the bond went up for a vote. Another concern that was brought up was just the types of projects that were put forth in the referendum, and how an individual was concerned that the projects didn't seem to make much sense, especially for the amount of money that was being budgeted for them. This specific concern was about the security vestibules that we had organized to be installed in all of the 13 schools as per question 1. This individual felt that such a measure was not necessary, kind of like slapping a Band-Aid on an open wound that really needs stitches, since this individual believes that the issues surrounding security in this era, where the threat of gun violence in public places is so prevalent, is not a matter of keeping bad people out of the school, since in 9 cases out of 10, the perpetrators are members of our community, people that we wouldn't expect to commit such violent acts, the people that we trust, that we're allowing into the community to begin with. So having the vestibules is more to them a security theater and not fixing the actual issue of what's driving these students, these young people, to commit such terrible atrocities. So they feel that spending $20 million or whatever figure they cited towards those security vestibules was just not an expenditure that they were willing enough to get behind to even vote for question 1, which automatically rules out them even passing through questions 2 and 3, since the conditions for this referendum are cumulative. So I am in favor of going with option 3, just engaging the community in further discussion, making sure that we find mediums for different people to voice these opinions, opinions that we often didn't see in the other organized meetings for whatever reason, just so that we can hear all of these different perspectives and the ones that we may not be really expecting, just so we can get a more holistic view of the concerns that are keeping people from getting fully behind these repairs that are sorely needed in our district. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. Julia, do you have anything you'd like to share with us?
I didn't come with anything prepared, but I do have a couple of things I'd like to say, more on the topic of moving forward with this conversation, not necessarily on specific issues with the bond that didn't pass last week. I've only sat on this side of the table for less than a year, but For pretty much 4 years before that, I was very frequently on that side of the table, and I was very frequently a part of this crowd that comes and gets really angry about a lot of different issues. I remember coming and speaking about science curriculum. I came and spoke about security. There were multiple instances where I found myself in this mob of people that was very passionate and very interested in making change on specific issues. And that's important. It's very important that our community is inspired and involved and finding ways to make our voices heard. But we need to make sure, well, I do believe that tabling this discussion is the most logical step forward for the bond. But if the board is going to open themselves up to this conversation with the community needs to make themselves available to have this conversation with the board. And your goal as parents, your goal as students, your goal as community members should not be to simply state your argument and to push that argument and to block out any argument that goes against it. Your goal should be to find a common ground and to find a medium and find something that will work for the betterment of the schools. If that is not your goal, then your goal is not actually the improvement of the schools. And that was the one issue that I was seeing a lot with Facebook. I'm in What's Up in Cherry Hill, and I'm in Cherry Hill United. And I do believe that Facebook is a really powerful tool, and social media as a whole is a really powerful tool in our community and in this generation. But there are risks that come along with it. If you're trying to get informed about issues, we can't be turning to social media, because I've talked to Dr. Malash about this, I've talked to multiple members of the board about this, that it's not reasonable for all of that information to be out there on social media. So the community has the responsibility to be available and to work to go and get that information and to learn the facts and not to learn the opinions on social media. I appreciate the effort of the community as a whole in getting people involved and getting people participating in this conversation, but we need to make sure that it's a facts-based conversation and not an argument, because ultimately everybody is speaking and everybody is sharing these opinions and getting involved because you do care about the betterment of the schools. But the only way that we'll move forward and the only way that tabling this discussion will work is that if it ultimately ends up with the discussion and not another series of arguments that don't get us anywhere. So that's the one piece of advice. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you to both of you. It's really incredible to realize just how young you are with your wise words, and we appreciate that. And I'm sure you would like me to say that you are much older, but you are young, but you are wise. Thank you for your very thoughtful comments. So there is no actionable item on our agenda tonight. And based on our discussion, we seem to be in consensus about tabling the bond and considering conversation moving forward. So at this point, I would just like to ask if there are any board members or our student reps who have any questions or comments on anything they heard from their colleagues at the table up here. Mr. Goodwin.
The one thing that I kind of heard from the colleagues as well as from my past experience, I really feel and really believe we need to set a very, we need to have the conversations, but we also have to have a timeline, because we've gone through this will be the third time since I've been on the board that we've had these discussions. This is the first time we actually moved forward with something. Whether it's defeated or not, I'm glad we at least had an action. So we have to have a time frame. I really feel like we need to figure out what's the time frame that we're going to work on. And we have to communicate that out and let everyone know this is the time frame we're working on, because otherwise we'll have this discussion again and nothing's going to happen. And our schools are still going to be in the same disarray that they're in today. So that's what I would say. We need to figure out, come up with a good timeline and expect that we communicate that out and let everyone know so we can have those discussions and be able to still move forward.
Well, actually, in terms of timeline, I think because from the experience that we worked on the bond, I think that it will take about 6 months for us to prepare those questions or even more. So I think the most sensible timeline would be voting again, maybe in the November election with the same ballots. So that will be also saving money as well as the, in terms of time.
Thank you, Dr. Wong. Our discussion tonight is just, we will get into the specifics of the discussion in the new year. And I've made notes of what the board members have said to inform the beginning of our discussion at the committee level and then at the work session and where applicable at the action meetings. So right now, our discussion is just to, what should our next step be? And our consensus has been that we are going to table the discussion and move forward in the new year to set up what that would look like. So it's a little premature at this point to even make guesses on what that time frame would look like or how long it's going to take. But we can all have input into that as we move the discussion forward in the new year when we reconvene. Mr. Tomlinson, do you have any other comments?
Just one quick comment. Absolutely wonderful what the two of you said about the bond and learning about the bond and kind of the community coming together. And it made me a little disappointed in that it took the bond failing to get this many people in this room to think about the bond together. This is the largest gathering in 3 years in talking about the bond that have come together to talk about the bond. And that's, it's both disappointing, but also hopefully it means that the board will be able to have a great discussion with the community going forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Goodwin, that is all I have for strategic planning. I'll turn it back to you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Do you have something?
I did, I'm sorry.
We're not done yet.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
We have these discussions at these public meetings, and there's no meetings outside of the public. So I would love to sort of capitalize on the discussion we're having tonight and at least try to decide no timelines, but what are our next steps and what can we expect by the next meeting? How do we move forward, right? Because I'm really thrilled that we're all on the same page. That's great news. That's hurdle number one. I just feel like I can't end the discussion without just knowing sort of what's next.
Well, as our board process works, the discussion starts in the committee level. And so this has been under strategic planning and has at times been talked about at BNF. So we will go back to those committees and we will restart the conversation. And we will talk about our next steps. We have 3 new board members coming on. They are not installed yet. And in the new year, once that happens, and we reconvene our meeting schedule, we can talk about what those next steps will look like. Right now, we've come to consensus on that's what our plan of action should be.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Goodwin, I think now I am done with strategic planning.
Thank you, Mrs. Matlack. That was good. And now we're going to have our second public discussion. This the second public comment section of the agenda. If you would like to speak now, please speak into the microphone clearly and state your name and address. Each speaker will be given a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. The timer will be green at the beginning of the time. When the timer turns yellow, that means you have 30 seconds left, and when the timer turns red, your time is up, and we ask you to please conclude your comments. All right.
Okay. Are we ready? Jen Nadio, 224 North Madison Avenue. First of all, everything that you just said about social media is super important. It's actually how we reach our 2,500 parents with special needs through Cherry Hill Special Ed PTA, because most of our parents cannot come to meetings. So they're getting the information from you, and it's really important that the right information is out there. But they're getting it from social media or emails, because just in my case, I can't get out all the time. Cherry Hill Special Ed PTA is very concerned about the accessibility in the schools and surrounding areas. This isn't the first time we brought this to the Board of Ed and administration. Our parents, members, have major concerns that they have expressed to their building principals, Board of Education, and the Cherry Hill School District Administration. Nothing changes. Just because we don't have a large number of students in wheelchairs and walkers or crutches or canes does not mean that we as a district get to ignore federal accessibility requirements. ADA requirements are put in place for all visitors, students, staff, and families who visit our schools. I saw the struggle from my stepfather, who attended Crucy graduation at Cherry Hill West Jones Gym in June, and I was appalled. The amazing part is that a CHSEPTA member OPRID all construction assessments in the last 10 years. The Basika project, number 12, CHS 00020, was created in 2010 and updated in 2013. It suggested actions which range from uneven broken sidewalks to hardscape to accessible playgrounds to non-accessible bathrooms to no ramp to the stages. This district had these reports for 8 years. These items are not new to you. These have not been fixed, many of them. Thomas Paine is planning a new vestibule, and there's not another exit with a ramp close to the multiply disabled classrooms for quick exit in the event of an emergency. Disability seating at High School West, new auditorium, is blocked by the soundboard. A parent struggled to attend a parent meeting at High School East due to broken hardscape and a dumpster blocking the accessible doorway. There are definitely not enough disability parking spots for the growing number of people needing them. These items and much more in this report must be fixed ASAP by the 2009 budget for the safety of our students and those who visit us in order to comply with the law. Thank you.
Before I make my comments, if I could just ask Lynn Sugars, there are a limited number of dates where bond referendum can be held. Do you have those dates for the next year to inform the board?
Why don't you go ahead? Your comments. We'll address any issues that we can at the end.
Okay, but again, I would just like to make sure that the board has that information as they go forward with their discussions, because there are a limited number of referendum dates that you need to put into your calendar. If you could restart the clock, I'd appreciate it. Hello, my name's Andrew McIlvain, 23 Jade Lane. I apologize, it's been 20 years since I sat where you sat, so I'm a little bit nervous. I'm by nature an optimist. I believe that the citizens of Cherry Hill will support a bond that addresses both school security and the maintenance and renovation of our aging facilities if properly informed and if discussion takes place of what should be an obvious need. Our 19 school buildings were built in the 1950s and 60s. They are heavily used for both education and recreation. Like our individual homes, things wear out and break over time. Heaters and air conditioners, water pipes, roofs, wastewater disposal, concrete, windows and doors, and more will fail over time, and in fact, they have. Because of budgetary limitations placed on districts by the state of New Jersey, what little can be devoted to maintenance on an annual basis to fit within the school operating budget is woefully inadequate to keep up. Every year we fall farther and farther behind. Our school buildings were not designed in a time when the thought of invasion by armed attackers was even a distant concern.
There are multiple entrance points in each of our buildings and wall upon wall of classroom and office windows that are easy target for a person or persons determined to do massive harm. The need to secure our schools to protect our children, our grandchildren, and our faculty and staff should be self-evident. The board, in my opinion, did a very good job of laying out a balanced program that met both needs. A great deal of information was available to support the referendum. With a bit of tweaking, I'm confident that the next iteration of the bond will pass. The last bond submitted to voters in 1998-99, I was privileged to have participated in the planning and the execution of that referendum and was pleased that it was supported by our community. I can assure you that gaining that support took a lot of work, but was well worth the effort. I think the most important thing I learned through that effort was the need to listen well to all points of view, to be open to suggestion from your critics, and to be confident in your answers to the criticism. You cannot please everyone, but you can persuade enough to achieve your goal. I don't like paying property taxes. I'm a retiree on a fixed income. The youngest of my 3 children graduated from West 15 years ago. I have good reasons why I should not support the bond. It is not in my interest to do so. However, I will willingly spend 67 cents per day to help to ensure the education of future generations of Cherry Hill children, and I invite the Cherry Hill community to join me in supporting the effort. One more paragraph. A wise person once said, "It takes a noble person to plant a seed for a tree that one day provides shade to those we will never meet." That is what we must do. I wish the board and the administration the best result of your endeavor. Although luck will have very little to do with it, I wish you good luck anyway.
All right, thanks.
My name is Jeff Kirk. I live at 102 Pearlcroft Road. I've been a resident of Cherry Hill for 28 years. My wife and I live there. Our children went through the schools here completely. Both graduated from Cherry Hill West. I ran for board in 2006 and 2007. Thank God for you and for me, I was defeated. But anyway, I thank you for all the work that you do. I would say the bond issue was unfortunate that it did not pass. However, I think it did not pass for some good reasons. I think you're wise now to table it and reconsider the issues. I think, as our young lady from Cherry Hill West said, the security vestibules, while they seem like a good answer, I don't think they're going to answer the problem of security. And we need security. Nobody disagrees with that. How to best achieve it, however, is the difficulty. I also would like to support Dr. Wong and his concerns about the educational excellence of our schools. That should be the very first thing that we're looking at. Our buildings support that effort, but they are not the effort itself. And I say that as a civil engineer, which is a pretty strange thing for a civil engineer to say, but I believe that. All right. The thing that I would say also has to do with, there was a study done in 2006 by a very distinguished task force appointed by the Board of Education to study, Kathy I think remembers it, others may too, all of our facilities. They spent about a year. There were 3 or 4 architects on that committee. My friend Bob O'Reilly is an architect and civil engineer, was on the committee. They visited every school. They prepared a detailed plan. Then the stock market crashed in 2008 and nothing could be done. I'm curious what happened to that study. Was it revisited in this latest effort? And because I think there were some very good thoughts there, one of which was to begin with the high schools, do the work there, then go to the middle schools and then to the elementary schools, so that the kids don't keep going through construction all the way through their schooling. I think that might be a very wise thing to consider at this time. Thank you all for your patience, and I hope it works the next time.
Hello, my name is Chris Benedetto. I live at 2 Thackeray Lane. I'm going to submit my formal comments to the secretary, but I'm going to go a little off script here. So first, thank you for your passion and your service and the wise thoughts tonight, and certainly thank you for the approach that you're taking here, because that obliterates my first point that I was going to make. Bottom line, I stand with you now. that you've heard us, and I think we need to seize this moment together and work together to build that long-term strategy. And I truly believe that working together, the state, the district, the community, the township, we can do this. I would ask that no vote be tabled, or that any vote that was even being considered be tabled tonight. The second thing I wanted to say was that the district and the Board of Ed wanted to know that what were the reasons that the bond was voted down. Here are some that I have heard, and there are 4. Number 1, it was perceived as fairly large and big and bloated. It was hard to figure out the difference between what we absolutely needed versus what was nice to have. So a suggestion, the community wants smaller, more tangible, agile-like projects. Second, it was perceived as not providing value for taxpayer money. For $211 million, people wanted to see new buildings and hear alternatives for reconstruction of schools, not just perceived maintenance. So a suggestion, the community demands and expects maximum efficiency and effectiveness of our dollars, and I think through more open communication and collaboration that will be clearer. Thirdly, it was perceived as not long-range or transparent enough. The bond seemed like a progressive to-do list of Band-Aids on large problems, as you mentioned, Sonia. Contributing to this was a lack of historical data on condition assessments and ongoing retrofitting costs and maintenance costs, and zero to the master plan. We missed a big opportunity there. Suggestion, the township master plan. Suggestion, the community needs more information to make an informed and supportive decision. And fourth, for those who have participated vigorously, such as myself in fair funding and Board of Ed and the bond, it was perceived, frankly, as lacking some straight talk. We didn't hear discussion about the hard conversations that we all know are underneath the surface. Do we need 19 schools? Why are we repairing buildings that are poorly built? Should we be considering a redistricting plan? Why are we engaging in exactly the same behavior that got us where we are now? What can we do differently? So a suggestion, let's have those conversations and seek pragmatic alternatives together. Thank you for your time, and again, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Who's the secretary?
Hello. Beth Becker, 17 Dunbarton Road. I also had to rewrite my statements. Thank you very much. First, I want to thank Mr. Dickinson and Ms. Judge and Mr. Tomlinson for your service. I know this is an enormous volunteer undertaking. And I also want to thank you for agreeing to table this discussion to engage with the community. We're not asking for the perfect. We're asking for due diligence and a focus on needs as opposed to wants, and based on research and facts. And again, I understand that a lot of this may have been done behind the scenes but was not presented to the public, and so it may have seemed to us that work that we thought should have been done was not done, and that may have been a communication issue, but I don't know. I look forward to working with the board and the administration to create a bond for which the majority of the community can get behind, because I agree that we do need a bond. The social media question. Going forward, the board must share its activism with the state, its research, its discussions, and its detailed plans with the public. People had to file Oprah requests to get cost breakdowns, and that doesn't foster a good relationship between the board and the community. The more information that you can give us, the more we're willing to trust you on the things that you say. I'm sorry, we can't share some information for various reasons. I appreciate looking into diverse funding sources. The community discussions going forward, I think, have to be two-sided, or not even two-sided, but they have to be actual discussions. It's going to be many-faceted, not just two-sided, but it's going to be many-faceted. The community discussions presenting the bond felt very, the wording was, come get the facts, as if it were a neutral presentation, but it obviously was not a neutral presentation. I wouldn't expect it to be a neutral presentation. The board created the bond. The board wanted the bond to go forward, of course. But I think a lot of the public saw through that. A lot of the public knew it wasn't a neutral presentation. It was a one-sided presentation with questions. And I will say again that 95% of school shootings are perpetrated by a student at the school. You're right, it's 95% actually, and I have stats for anybody who wants them. Vestibules are not going to keep those kids out, and I understand it's best practices by the state, but the state says best practices when the funds are available, and there are a lot of things we're doing that are best practices by the state that we just can't afford, and it seems like an enormous waste of money that was front-loaded, and so we couldn't have roofs and everything else with that. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Sean McKittrick, 15 Massachusetts Avenue. I think there's a combination of two factors that may have explained this problem. One is I know that I, as a voter, tried to find information. I don't do social media at all. I canceled my Facebook account years ago. I don't participate in that sort of thing, and I tried and I tried and I tried to find information. I just couldn't find it. Second of all, the way that it was worded, I'm a political scientist, and I had to have people explain it to me. Voting for one qualifies for another. That must mean that the second and third, if I don't like the first, then my votes on the second and third are negated. Then somebody said that's not so true, but it was not well represented at all. So combined with a lack of communication and then the poor wording of the ballot initiative, it made it look, and this probably was not the intention, definitely wasn't, it made it look deceptive. It simply made it look like you're going to give us what we want by voting on this first initiative and then the second and the third or otherwise, and with a lack of information, my wife and I, we're saying, what is this about? We can't figure this out. It really does look like we have to vote for the first in order to even vote for the second and the third, when the best presentation would be just to vote 3 separate initiatives independently, it would seem, and given that fog of war, we made the decision to vote no. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dr. Carmen Henderson, 14 Edgewood Drive. So I'm here because I did request to speak to the board during an executive session, and my request was denied by Dr. Malash and Mr. Dickinson. And so I did state that I would come and make my statement during a public session. My son is no longer in Cherry Hill Public Schools, and so I need to state that my husband and I, we do have a very strong belief in children being educated in public schools. It is important for children to be a part of their community. And we came to the decision to have our son educated in private school for his last 2 years of high school because of incidents of bullying that we felt were not handled by the board appropriately or school administration. When a child is bullied by the same student, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th grade, and the findings come back unfounded, there's a problem. Because we were at a state where we became very concerned about our son's life. His mental status was in a place that it wasn't good for anybody, not his peers, not anyone in the house, not himself, based on a decision that the board made of unfounded. So now what we're doing is trying to put pieces back together that we're not sure that we can put back together, because that unfounded decision equated to him that he does not matter. And so when he is approached by school staff telling him how he should be as a black male when that person is not a black male themselves, that is also problematic. I'm a black mom who wouldn't dare tell my black son how to be as a black male when he was targeted because of his race and his disability. And so I know that the situation is not uncommon because I've had other parents come to me with similar situations of their children being bullied and that the board is not handling or administration is not handling the situations appropriately. The second issue that I do have is administrators within the special services department making unilateral decisions. We have New Jersey Administrative Code 6814 for a reason. The code is complicated enough, so we don't need people to make any additions to it. Listen to parents when they are telling you that administrators are not hearing them, because it's difficult being a parent, but it's also very difficult being a parent of a child who has special needs. That you can't shut that off.
I'm going to have to ask you to end it there, but if you would like, you can feel free to send an email to the board of any of your concerns as well, and it can be addressed in that way as well.
To all of the members of the board.
Yeah.
And will I receive a response? Because it took Dr. Malash over a month just to respond to tell me I couldn't meet with the board.
Well, you'll definitely get a response.
Okay, thank you.
David Rossi, 102 Roanoke Road. Over the last several months, the district has made hundreds of social media posts informing the public about the bond meetings, and about voter information, and those things are definitely important. However, since December 11th vote, the district has not made one social media post regarding this meeting to get input from the voting public. Messaging is important. It shows people what is valued. It is important to understand why people voted for the bond and why people voted against the bond. Why I voted no. For almost $250 million that lacks long-term vision, for almost $250 million, why were the discussions of consolidation and rebuilding some of these buildings which are in need of most repairs not shared as part of the process? It was missing key information such as individual project cost, site project cost, long-range facilities plan, information, and ongoing feasibility studies. When those documents were requested, they were not willingly provided as part of the discussions. Only when community members sent requests through the Open Records Act were those specific documents received. They included information such as summary cost estimate forms that showed $33 million being spent on repairs to Carusi. They also showed a combined $100 million to be spent on repairs to East High School, West High School, Carusi, and Rosa. Sharing competitive cost analysis on rebuilding some of these schools would have been helpful for me, the voter, to determine perceived value. The absence of this information in the bond discussions gave the perception not only was it a poor value to take on some of these projects, but also further provided lack of transparency and fostered a lack of trust. It also questioned were cost comparisons to rebuild and consolidated considered at all? Did the administration provide the documents to the BOA during this planning phase? It was massive and complex. It grew from one question, $50 million, to three questions at $210.7 million in less than 6 months. Although the district and the BOE may have historically fought for our fair funding, when the citizens and those in the fair funding community began to apply intense pressure on the state and local legislators, the district and the BOE backed off. When I was in Trenton testifying with others, I saw districts with a unified front demanding more from the state legislators. Consider that perception. Now compare it to the massive efforts by the district in promoting a bond that requires local taxpayers to burden the increased debt of almost $250 million, all while we have been shorted $150 million or more over the last decade. It's not a good look. A 7% contingency is low by most standards. It may meet state guidelines, however, cost overruns are a realistic concern with the size and scope of these projects. It is important for the district to be inclusive, to be an inclusive, all-inclusive environment for all students, staff and community members. We need to do a better job. When some of our children are not able to access a stage or join their classmates in activities, the words "inclusive to all" are just that, words. The questions of creating an accessible environment for all failed to be answered. Even if they cannot be addressed in this bond, then inform us what is the plan to address these types of accessibility needs. I'll send the rest of my reasons.
Okay, thank you.
This is Sophia Lee at 500 Queen Anne. I wish the retired board members well. Best luck in your future endeavor. As you may know, I've been representing an association of Asian parents on specific topics, such as the Chinese language, in the last couple of years. Thank you, board member and administration, for eventually, in your tenure this year, the Chinese program has been successfully kicked off. Today, on the bond topic, I'm confident that our association of the Asian parents stand by the no vote, and we want a better bond. Also, I assure you, my friends, and the vast majority of people I spoke to, my neighbors, they stand by the no vote. They want a better bond. To reiterate, I'm with Chris Benedetto and Beth Belker. Their comments on an acceptable bond, how it should look like. The new bond should build based on straight talk, real planning, needs, and specifics. Begin building a clear or clearer vision for the future, as Ed Wang suggested. Also, as Dr. Wang and Mrs. Scapolino suggested, community communication has morphed into multimedia. A good board has to somehow take that into consideration. Fair funding, I'm with Dave Rossi. Please take into some of his points into consideration. It's a good fight, and some other townships had better success. We need to try to model them. I also praise Mrs. Sedell in your reflection on the reasons for the no vote. So now it's time to, after the new year, it's time to turn our focus to the outcome. Let's stay very results focused, make ourselves available, have real street talk and good communication, build a better bond that people want to vote yes for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Andy Barrand, 112 Ashbrook Road. I was a no vote, and I desperately wanted to be a yes vote. And let me tell you why you did not get it. Transparency. This was a complete lack of transparency. To have line items that are showing $1 when we know they're tens of thousands of dollars, it's not transparent. A couple of folks have already mentioned the study, the engineering and architectural study. I've read that study. I saw it. It was the same year that Carol Matlack and I ran for the school board when that came out. I've seen that study. It's highly disturbing, to say the least, and I know that there's been an update to that. If you want transparency, take that document, put it up on the Cherry Hill Board website. Let people actually read that and know what the conditions of these buildings are. Because the ending statement, and I think this was what, 2010, 2011, was that most of these buildings, if not all, are end of life. So I think you very eloquently put it, putting Band-Aids on a gusher, that's what we're doing here. And it's not just $210 million. By the time we're done with this, it's close to $307 million. And at that point, you have no chance of passing another bond to do anything else to these buildings for another 20 years. It's not an acceptable way to do this. You need to look at replacing the buildings. 10 years ago, I came to this board and I said, Subaru is going to leave. Why don't we make sure we get, and this goes back to the master plan, access to a site like that. So that way we have a space problem in this town. There isn't a lot of open land. We could have used a building to move students in, knocked down a building, and rebuilt on the same spot, but nobody wants to listen to that. I'm very happy that you've tabled this because I think that getting community engagement is very, very important. You have to make a plan that's going to go 20 years and beyond. You have to put the real costs out there. You have to address the real needs from an educational standpoint too, and I haven't heard anything talked about with that. Put that addenda up there. Sorry, I lost my spot. I would not remove schools from the project list. They all need something. But the idea of consolidating or doing something where you're able to rebuild a bit at a time, I'd sign for a bigger bond if I knew it was going to be effective. And I think if you asked the community, they would tell you the same thing. But you gave us no information. You gave us bad information. Post that study. You're going to gain some people with an understanding of what these buildings are actually like. We all have students in them. We know about the mice in the hall, the mold, the lead in the water, all of these things. We know about it. But putting a $307 million bond is irresponsible, especially when you don't have the information to back it up. It really is. And I've been in building materials for a very long time, and I can tell you some of those figures are very disturbing. Thank you.
Good evening. Dawn Epstein, 526 King George Road. First of all, I would just like to thank the board for all of your hard work. You had a very, very hard job to do what you thought was best with the info that you had, with the comments and opinions that were available to you, which were few. You obviously care about our kids and you care about these schools, and as a parent, I just really appreciate the hard work that you do. All of the meetings you go to, the time away from your families. It's a very selfless job, and I just want you to know that there are people out there who really do appreciate the hard work that went into this bond. I'm very encouraged to hear your consensus about tabling the revote and engaging with all of the voices, many of whom were silent the first time around. I appreciate your willingness to engage in this discussion and not just go back out and say this is what we did. It shows a lot of humility, and I think that it's commendable. I do sincerely hope that those who voted no will do their part, but to also engage in this discussion and approach these conversations with a goal of compromise and progress, and not, as Julia said, with a goal of just to give their side without listening to the other side, because we can't make everyone happy. I think even if 2 or 3 of the no vote groups can come together, we might be able to swing it, but there are some people who are never going to be happy, and it's a challenge going forward. I also must echo Mr. Tomlinson's concern about how tabling this vote impacts the zero tax impact option. I know you worked very hard, and the board was adamant that there must be a question that does not raise taxes, and the 3-question structure was a result of that strong feeling, and I appreciate that. There are a lot of people who voted no solely based on the tax impact, and giving them an option with a zero tax impact was important. And we just can't miss that. This is an opportunity that we're going to have to miss now by tabling it, and I just can't. It's hard for me to swallow that you could have gotten $50 million of work done with zero tax impact, and that's just really challenging. Okay. So in the end, I just hope that the people who voted no can come with some very specific ideas and a willingness to compromise, because I thought this bond was excellent. I thought that it was evenly distributed across the schools. I thought it addressed necessary things. If the engineers said we didn't need new schools, I'm not an engineer. Who am I to say? I think that you did the best with the information that you had, and I appreciate really all of the hard work that you do for our children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Name's Paul Stanko, 7 Hunters Drive. I'd like to take time to say thank you again to the board for all the work you've done. I heard Dr. Miller speak the day before the bond referendum at Stockton, and we had a back and forth with all 15, I think, were there, but thank you for your time. There I posed a question about revenue. I'm looking forward to, how can we get additional revenue source? And I'd ask him a question about taxing of businesses, and I came across the pilot program, which is means payment in lieu of taxes as Cherry Hill continues to redevelop and additional get new redevelopment and new buildings here. It's a tax source that I don't know if it's being addressed. So my question really, hopefully to the board, is one, do we have a list of companies or developers that are in a pilot agreement with Cherry Hill? If so, can you provide us with a list of the top 10? Second question is, have you sat down with the city council to work possible ways of collection revenue with them and work jointly? I know we have worked together to get the turf fields, which is very nice, and hopefully that's a transition into more transparency. And thirdly, also, can you work closely with the city council to come up with other innovative ways to help the school district? And that's really my questions here. But again, thanks for your time and all your effort. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Rick Short, 1002 Charlton Parkway.
I want to thank each and every one of the board members for tabling this and working together with the community. I'm very excited about this. I also want to mention that, as you all know, I've been very active for the last 2 or 3 years, following the board very, very closely, and I will defend the board on certain issues, like the time with fair funding when we heard Ms. Seidel and Ms. Judge speak, and when you can tell from your voice that you care and you're doing your best, you should be stuck up for. So I am hopeful for that with fair funding. I must also say that the next bond, it needs to be totally transparent. You keep hearing that from person after person. The most important thing, and I think you guys missed the ball, there was a report, a survey done, independent, totally, only 10 of my friends or 11 of my friends did it. On August 23rd, 2017, this was before any of the Parkland shooting or any of the other shootings, 95% of the public was telling you, review your protocols. 90% wanted better secured doors. 75% wanted armed officers. Again, I didn't create it. I just reported it. I also like the ideas of Chris Benedetto. And the last thing is, you know, I keep coming up here talking about security. We're not at that point. We can't wait 3 to 5 years to get average security. I can't challenge a Cherry Hill math teacher. I can't definitely challenge a Cherry Hill English teacher, but I can challenge about security. And the very, very last thing is at Cherry Hill West, the middle doors, you have 2 outside doors and a middle door. It's unsecured. It's unlocked every day at drop-off. And then also, why do you have a armed officer directing traffic when they should be at the side drop-off door? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I hope you can understand me. I have a hoarse voice, and sometimes I sound like Catherine Hepburn from my migraine, so bear with me, please. My name is Naomi Lubkin. I am living at 404 Longstone Drive in Cherry Hill. I am in the east side. My children are grown. They're 30, 28, 29, or 29, 28, and they all went through Sharp, Beck, and East. And I do remember taking in gallons of black paint to paint 14 years ago, to paint the theater room because there was a big flood and there was no money to buy paint. This is all through the time that the kids were in school. Now, Dr. Malash, you asked in the Courier Post that anybody who disapproved of the bond come out and say why. I can't even imagine why there's a question, but the voters put in 3 new board members. They defeated 3 bonds. That's a big message. They actually gave the bond an F. And why is that? And I had heard that it cost over $40,000 to do this election, and it's going to come back to the voters. It sounds very hopeful that you're going to table it now. To the girls who will be out in the real world and you'll be in college, if you get a charge for a college pack, that's $250. They say, what is it? Well, it's everything that you need to write with and whatever. You're going to want to know a list of what it is. That's what the parents want. That's what the voters want. We don't want statements like and HVAC improvements to all-purpose rooms and other areas. That doesn't work. I've had a lot of work done on my house, and it just won't fly. Now, I came to Cherry Hill 31 years ago. I was happy about the schools, but that's not what brought me here. We actually couldn't find a house. We're being taxed to death, and I say that because there's a whole underlying thing going on in Cherry Hill about things being done without voter approval. So voters are really looking at these things. Despite that, number one, I've said to the parents and the children, I want them taken care of. I want good things for them. I want to support the parents. I remember being a parent with kids in school, taking them to practices, to meetings, to everything. So I have to compliment the social media Cherry Hill Acts because I have found much information on there that is helpful. Okay, and we want to be a community that raises our kids here with the school system. And we don't want to be a community that the parents have to leave because they can't afford it. So that's why we're looking at that, and an itemized list per school is what I would approve of. And I never met Dr. Wang. I love you. Your comments are great and on point. Even with the timeline and things like that, that always can be moved, but it gives us something to look for and to work toward. And I think it's excellent, all of your comments. And I'm done. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. Ben Ovadia, 100 Roanoke Road, Cherry Hill, New Jersey. I did not prepare comments for tonight, but I wrote down a few notes. First, I want to say thank you to the 3 outgoing Board of Ed members. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You know, I mean, Dr. Barry, he served for a long time and did a lot of good. You know, I mean, that's reality. Second, middle school reps, right? We've got 2 high schools. We've got 3 middle schools. Where are middle school reps? Civics. You know, there's all sorts of discussion about bringing civics back to the curriculum, to the schools. Some of these middle schoolers could handle it. I'm not nominating my son, but I'm also not excluding him. But, you know, middle school reps. I mean, actually, you know, really amazing comments, you know, from this side of the table today. You know, obviously, by the side of the table that I was, I agreed with the second more than the, you know, but it's fine. I mean, this sort of divided us, but it gave us also, I think, a chance to really talk. Just like, you know, this side of the house was much more put together and populous today, you know, we heard a lot more on this side as well. And that's the thing. I mean, I wish I could have stolen 1,500 votes, no doubt, on Election Day. I couldn't. But at the same time, at the end of the day, believing in democracy doesn't mean that it's easy, or that you don't get called names, which is rare for me, or any of those things. But it means, though it's hard, people are listening. I know in many meetings I've been at, I've been one of the few that's not an employee or someone who's getting recognized for something. I have not gotten recognized enough, obviously. But, you know, I'm still there, and it is good to see all these folks. I do agree with timeline. I do. Maybe this isn't the meeting for it, right? But we do need to work back from something. For me, it was extremely disappointing today when I realized September's the first time this is going to come back. You know, I hadn't fully realized it today, but I had to tell someone today, and I realized, oh, yeah, it's not going to be before that. You know, the fall is the first time we'll look for this. So whatever that date is, and working backward and figuring it out, I don't think Dr. Malash can do more meetings on his own, right? I don't think that's going to get us 2,000 more votes or whatever it is that we needed. People have to come together. People have to accept that we live in a town, right? We live in a place. We live in a community. It may not be your problem in a master plan or whatever the hell you call it. Well, they're old enough. It may not be your problem, right? But it's all of our problem. We've got to come together, and whether it's zone PTA or your individual PTA or your neighbors or whoever, or whether you ever want to sell a house or whoever, we got to get together, right? So that's really important. And the last thing I would say is, you know, social media gives us an opportunity to really choose our poison. And, you know, there are very active sites. I don't think it's a good or a bad thing. It lets us be a little bit more anonymous, although I suspect most people, 85%, use their actual name. So it's not quite anonymity, but it gives us a chance to talk. I would challenge us to really think about what ethics means and what the state guidelines mean in a social media world, because for me, who's very, very involved, it's important to understand. I mean, what can and cannot be done, be said is fine, as long as we know what that is, and then we can work from there. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jessica Mazer, 1006 East Tampa. I grew up in this district, K through 12. I have 3 kids that will, well, one in elementary, one in Barkley, and one who I was heavily pregnant with last time I stood here. I want to stress how important social media was in this bond referendum. I know Ms. Seidel brought it up. It really is going to be important, and in my own career, I know that legal ties our hands with what we're allowed to say. I had to go to my legal department to find out if I could publicly say how I was going to vote on this bond. So I think even if that is the case, we need to be open about that and say, look, these are the guidelines we have to live within as Board of Ed members. But the community needs to be able to understand that. This week alone on Facebook, I was called arrogant and a folk hero on the same thread about the Cherry Hill School District. So I think in order to really make this work and to bring the no votes in, we need to listen and discuss and figure out how to make those conversations happen. Thank you.
Yoni Yair, still at 422 Trail Boulevard, have not moved in the last hour or so. I think over there on the wall is a really great statement. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. I think in the last hour it's shown the Board of Education has taken the opportunity to learn. And as a group that represents education, that's key. A lot has been said about social media. I think I've grown to hate it, and it was my career during this. But engagement is really key. I serve on the district's cultural proficiency and 2 other words that I often forget as the recording secretary. But we have 3 key things to talk about: respect, responsibility, and citizenship. I think in order for this to work, those on all sides of this have to commit to those 3 things. 1, be responsible to show up. When the board engages you, if there's a survey, or things like that, I don't want to hear again, it was too difficult, it was this, or is that. Have a design survey that looks great, make it go out, work with people within the area, and then make sure it gets out. And then once that happens, those on the other side, make sure you fill it out. That if the district makes it accessible, makes it what you want to see in a survey, fill it out. In terms of respect, make sure you respect everyone in the conversation. Everyone at this board table chooses, they are volunteers. It is not fun to sit and take 20, 30 hours a month, if not more. I see Carol at every meeting I seem to be at. We seem to be following each other. I know how many hours she puts in, and on top of day jobs, and remember that. There are professionals and there are volunteers. The Board of Education is governed as volunteers. In terms of funding, it's time for those of us citizens to sit and advocate. Is property taxes the best way to be funded? That is not a Cherry Hill Board of Education discussion. That is a statewide discussion that has to be led by the parents. Go and sit and advocate. I did it as a student at Rutgers. I did it as an adult slightly after graduating. It is important to go and be heard. And that's well beyond the walls of this district. And finally, citizenship is showing up. Yes, social media is a way to show up, but everything is governed in person. You have an issue presented. Attend the meetings. I have sat at Board Business and Financial. I was going as a pickup meeting, but it was very important for things to be heard. A lot of it was going on in my son's school for Kilmore about the 747 being parked in the library. Thank you for getting that taken care of during winter break. Attend strategic planning. Be able to talk during those sessions. It is low key. It is accessible. Show up to those meetings. Yes, it takes a lot of time, but make the time. If this is truly important to you, show up and make the time and be heard. Do not just post on social media. It is a genuine waste of time in terms of how things actually work in the real world. Things show up. The government has not yet switched to social media being an effective platform. You can't vote online yet. So please show up and be heard and respect the process. I agree with that God said. It won't be perfect, but it could do something. And finally, in terms of consolidation, make sure you run down the consequences. We have several schools that are Title I. We don't want to lose that designation. Many people in this room have talked about going after all funding sources. Losing Title I dollars is not an option. Know that if you were to consolidate schools, to make sure the number is maintained so we keep that Title I funding and other issues like that when we already are getting accessible funding from the federal government. So thank you again for all you do. You know I am in your corner and everything else.
David Oppenheim, 22 Tunbridge Road. I'm a 23-year resident of Cherry Hill, and I'm not proud to say this is the second Board of Education meeting I've attended. I want to thank Dr. Malash for pushing my buzzer enough in asking the question of why I voted no. And I stood in that ballot box for 5 minutes before I could do that, so it didn't come easily. It was either Socrates or Plato writing about Socrates that said, only true wisdom is knowing that you know nothing. So in that sense, I'm extremely wise when it comes to what's going on here. When it comes to social media, and I wanted to address what Ms. Langmuir said, I agree. The next time I'll be on Facebook is the first time I'll be on Facebook. So I see value, but I also see a lot of landmines out there. But transparency for me was an issue. And someone had mentioned before, I don't want to repeat, but when you had 3 candidates running on transparency, that has to speak a message of what's going on out in the community. I don't have solutions today, but I think we really have to start thinking outside of the box. Because, and I think Ms. Seidel mentioned it, whatever we can do, and it's not today to do that, but that has to be considered. And I don't know what those answers are. I'll offer my services however they can be, because I don't know anything. And sometimes not knowing anything can be both a curse and a benefit. So I'll offer that up in any way. I also heard from some people speaking tonight that there's a lot of wisdom out there. And one thing I must say to all of you, because I'm never here, is I greatly appreciate the time and effort that you put out. I know it must be very painful for you, and I heard it as you went around talking how it is, because you've invested a lot of yourselves in it, and it matters to you, and Cherry Hill is a great place to be. I'm proud to have my children here as students. I've also, in 23 years, I've seen my taxes double. My salary hasn't. And we can't continue to think that we can continue to put our hands into the pocket of taxpayers and in some way pit the welfare and benefit of our students and our children against homeowners. It's not realistic. And we have to find other ways. And it's going to require outside-the-box thinking, I think. And I don't know anything. Finally, there's an elephant in the room, and I don't know if there's anyone out here anywhere that can do anything about it. But in the township of Cherry Hill, in 2017, I took advantage of public records. Pensions cost $46 million. It's not sustainable. I don't think anybody's doing anything illegal or anything like that, but we spend a ton of money. I downloaded the state file. It was 155 meg. There are over 350,000 people on pension here. $166 billion. It's not sustainable, and we can't kid ourselves, and I'll be quick, we can't kid ourselves in thinking that that isn't part of the problem here as well. I don't have answers, but we've got to find better solutions, and the last quote I'll leave you with is whoever you want to attribute it to is the definition of insanity, and that's doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rich Bowen. I reside at 13 Webster Avenue in the Earlton South section of the township. I think many of you recognize me as one of the louder voices of the opposition. I want to thank you for doing what you did. I think it shows a commitment on your side to sacrifice something. Obviously, we in the opposition are going to have to do the same thing. We're going to have to come here and sacrifice something. Unfortunately, and this is going to probably be the most obvious statement of the evening, we are not starting at a point of 0 here. We are starting at a point of -10. And that has nothing to do with anybody in this room. That has to do with prior administrations that got us into the situation that we got into. I think that as far as your questions about what was it about no voters that didn't, why they voted no, I don't think we're actually that far apart, and I don't think there's actually that many reasons. Transparency was one of them. The amount, obviously, and the fact that did we actually need everything to be done. I mean, those are the basic, and there are a couple others. I'm sure you've made notes on them. All right, we're not that far apart. If we can get together and communicate, that's going to make all the difference in the world. What Ms. Seidel said about timing, however, and I don't think she was talking about specific parts of the bond issue, I think where we're going to have to sacrifice is we're going to have to make decisions on what is most important. We are going to have to work on priorities because we are not going to get everything we want to do over the next few years. I'm sure in that bond, and maybe even in your budget, there are things we could do without. No, we don't want to, and I understand that, and we want to make sure that the children, the students, are actually taken care of and they don't lose out. But it's going to take sacrifice. This is not going to be easy. I think you all know that. As I said, it's the most obvious thing that was probably said tonight. I also wanted to say, I was listening to people, a couple of comments before. One of the kids said, I love West. Well, I want to tell you, I love West too. I went there and I graduated in 1977. As I was standing in the back, I realized that last year I attended my 40th reunion at P.J. Wellhands last summer. Okay? At that point, I just realized that there are members of this board, more than one, that were not born when I graduated from West. So what I want to say, and the reason I bring that up, and also another thing is the young lady here talked about Johnny Iannucci, our football hero from Cherry Hill West. Johnny Iannucci is growing up in the house I grew up in. So what I want to say is, please don't think that the opposition is not concerned about the children of this township and the students. We are. We may have a different approach. We may have a different way we think it can be done. But don't ever say we're not as committed as anyone else in this room because it's absolutely not true. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Jennifer Brumbaugh, 1758 T Rose Lane. I prepared some comments, which, because you unanimously decided to table it, I'm going to try to edit on the fly. I thank you very much for coming together and making that statement. I think this is a turning point for our community. I want to thank the outgoing board members. As many people may know, I helped coordinate the campaign for Tong Neri and Rossi, who will be coming in January. We took no pleasure in unseating either of you. We just felt that it was a good path forward for our community. And I cannot imagine signing up for this job, so thank you very much. And I truly appreciate all the time and effort. Just the piddly stuff I've been doing to try to advocate for things, I feel worn out, and so I can't imagine what the last 3 years and 9 years plus have been like. So thank you. And I will try to get through my comments very quickly because it's late. I thought about just not saying anything, but since Dr. Malash, you've explained in the paper that you want to understand the no vote, and because the mayor made comments kind of insinuating that any no vote didn't value education, I felt I'm going to make this quick, but I'll try to give you the short version of my no, which wanted very much to be a yes. Let's see. So I was one of the many thousands of no's, and I come from generations of teachers and administrators. My sister's a middle school teacher. 3 years ago, my husband and I spent our savings to move our family to Cherry Hill, specifically for the education, because our prior district was not serving the needs of our daughter. There's no option to leave. We're here for the long haul. I want this district to succeed. We absolutely made the right decision. The last 3 years have been the best in our teenager's life. But we've been completely dismayed by the physical facilities. And I understand how they got that way. I'm desperate to improve them, but I just couldn't in good conscience vote yes for this. I'm a well-educated and informed voter. I know exactly what my no meant. I know what the risk is in voting no, but I couldn't do it. So in October, this public proposal was made, and sticker shock is, to put it mildly. I've been following along fairly closely, and to go from 50 million to 100 million, and then over 200 million, I was surprised at the sheer amount of money being requested. But it is for the kids. Oh, crud. Here we go. Okay. So I was open to the idea. Our family budget, thankfully, can absorb the tax increase that was proposed, but I wanted to be sure it was a sound and responsible plan. So I started to review the specifics and approach this like I would a contract for improvements in my own home. Unfortunately, many of the detailed documents had to be Oprah'd and paid for by the community members. And I see I'm already out of time.
Yeah.
So
if you want, you can definitely email those
I will.
comments.
Long story short is I felt suspicious about the timing of the security audit happening after. I felt nervous and unconvinced that this was the best path forward, and I just couldn't vote yes. But if you can prove to me that you are truly going to listen to the community's input and come together and come up with a plan that is responsible and has vision, I will be your biggest supporter. Thank you all.
Laurie Neary, 301 Bell Arbor Drive. I just want to say thank you. I don't often come to this mic with praise, but I have to say thank you for speaking to the community, and the change in tone I heard tonight as everyone spoke about delaying the dialogue on this bond was commendable and long overdue. This was the pivot the community has so longed for since last February and much earlier than that. Thank you. Young ladies, you're speaking tonight. Thank you. And I sincerely hope you consider spending time in civics as you go on in your careers, your academics, because that is the voice that everyone needs to hear and the example that our kids need to see. So thank you. I'd like to say, regarding the no voters, I do think we need to respect them, not chastise them for their vote. Many of them wanted to vote for this bond. It was not about voting down a bond. It was about understanding what's our vision for the next 20 years and beyond. This wasn't about just the survival of our schools, but the future of our community and what this meant for it to grow, not stay stagnant, and certainly not sink it. So I thank you for thinking about this and taking that long, hard look as we go forward to bring everyone out to discuss. Because I don't think the engagement of those who chose to come out only from 3 to 8 on a Tuesday in December in the middle of the holidays to make their voice heard, I'd really like to believe that they're not going to go away and they're going to continue to engage and speak and say what matters most to them. I think they're ready to have the long, hard conversations that we've so just swept under the rug. I think the community is ready to talk about, do we need 19 schools? What does that look like? We have many Title I schools, 8, I believe. Those students don't go away. So I think it's important to understand that that tax burden was really impactful. That 64 cents a day is half the cost of a lunch that some of those students can't afford to buy. So it is really important to remember that their life outside of school and the impact it has on them at home matters as much as it does their day in the school building. I thank you, and I really look forward to working with the community and understanding how we can get this right. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Scott Lackernick. I live at 67 South Syracuse Drive. First, I appreciate all the work that went into this. This was an incredible undertaking, and I haven't been to a board meeting in a long time, and it sounds pretty much the same as I remember it. To the outgoing board members, Kathy, I will say that you and Eleanor were the reason I stayed engaged in PTA when my kids were in school. So I appreciate you leading and your mentorship and everything you've done for the school district. You're amazing. Ken, I wish I get to know you better, but hopefully you'll run again. And I will tell you that wherever your future goes, Kath, my lawn has a space for a sign for you, always. As far as the bond is concerned, I mean, I was a no vote, and I would just tell you that one of the reasons was because I didn't get to read or I didn't see anything about who was doing the bidding for these jobs and where these jobs were going and was it really necessary and were some of the enormity of the bond really as prioritized as it should have been. I think Ms. Seidel has the right idea. Alternative financing, alternative ways to finance these things with naming rights and other things that we can work with the community and work with the mayor to get some alternative ways to finance these things so that the impact isn't so sticker shock for the taxpayer. You know, my kids are out of school. They've been out of school for a couple of years now. And you know, I'm not ashamed to say that I love Cherry Hill. I love the schools here. I think they're fantastic. It's why I moved here. That's why I stay here. But I think that we need to move forward. As far as these young ladies are concerned, I'm so impressed. My goodness. I mean, their comments were just incredible. And I wish you luck. I'd be more than happy to be available and as far as comparing Rowan to Harvard, I teach at Rowan. I'm a professor there. I mean, my goodness. That was like insulting for a second. So overall, I just want to say thank you all for all your hard work and all your dedication. And I know the enormity of the work that you do, just from my involvement years ago. And happy holidays to all of you, and Happy New Year, and enjoy the season. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other comments? Okay, if there's no other comments, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Malash to address whatever things he can address and make any comments he can.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. So just a couple of things. First, Mr. McIlvain asked about when can you out and vote, right? So there are 5 times during the course of the year that the state sets those dates. There's a September date. It's typically the last Tuesday in September. This year it was the first Tuesday in October, because the last Tuesday in September was a Jewish holiday, although the first Tuesday in October was also a Jewish holiday this year. You can go out for a referendum on the general election day in November, which is the first Tuesday after the first Monday. You can go out for a referendum the second Tuesday in December, and then there's a January date and a March date. I believe it's the fourth Tuesday in January, second Tuesday in March. Those are the 5 times we can go out for referendum. So just as a clarification, those are the only times that they can take place. So when we originally talked about it, right, the option that was left to us would have been the March date, right, because we have to certify the information, the board has to select a date, has to approve the questions, and then the information has to be certified and sent to the county 60 days prior to the election. So the January date would not have been an option, and then with the discussion tonight, the March date is not an option. So just a couple of thoughts as we are a week out from the election, and a week ago there was a handful of us sitting in the boardroom, kind of as a follow-up, and Mrs. Matlack talked about Dr. Smith, making the comment as we walked out of that room that there would be 11,000 kids that would show up, the next day on December 12th, and they did, and they showed up this morning, and the majority of them will show up on January 2nd, and through the end of the year, as we hit June 20th, when our high school kids will graduate, and you saw that was approved tonight, the graduation ceremony, and Friday, June the 21st, which is the last day of school in this academic year, those kids will show up. They will continue to do so. They'll also show up next September, right? It's one of the beautiful things about what we do and where we are. I always am appreciative of the board reps, and the board reps that we have each year seem to continue to improve with their perspective and their understanding and their willingness to be thoughtful and reflective. And I'm always grateful to the young ladies, what they offer here at the meetings and what they offer to us, administratively and to the board in terms of their perspective. At graduation each year, one of my favorite things of participating, and I love the graduation ceremony because it truly is the culmination. It's one of those things as educators, I can't imagine an educator in the school district not wanting to be at the high school graduation. It's why we do what we do, and to celebrate truly that achievement, not just of the valedictorians, but of every child that comes across that stage, because every child has a story of what their experience has been and what their future is going to be. And one of the ways that I finish my speech each year is that I thank the graduates because they are the greatest blessing that we have, and they remind us that as educators and as parents that we truly have the greatest gift and the greatest responsibility for what we do because of who they are as individuals. And as a community, we are gifted with that responsibility and with that blessing to have these children that are in our community and in our schools. There was no win last Tuesday, and I'm grateful to folks coming out to the meetings. And over the last number of years, many of you have attended different meetings, some small meetings, some large meetings, and you'll hear me say that I like when there's people at meetings. I like when people come out. We don't have to agree, right? Everybody does not have to have the same perspective. And it's actually beneficial to us and for us as a community for folks to disagree. It's how we improve. Right? It's how we move forward. One of my biggest cautions always is about how that disagreement looks and how it plays out. Because while we are adults and we have thicker skins at times than children do, there's a way for us to disagree and to do it in a respectful manner. And we talked about, a couple people talked about the Cultural Proficiency Committee, and we were recognized as a National District of Character, one of 5 in the nation, one of 5 districts in the nation to receive that recognition, which is a tremendous feat because of our size. And our 3 core values that we go over with the children all the time are respect, responsibility, and citizenship. And we believe that. It's something that we believe that we should espouse in our classrooms from the preschools up through the high schools, and that we expect children to conduct themselves in a manner that identifies those 3 core values. And I just hope as we move forward that folks are willing to do that. I'm grateful that people are here, and we do need to come together. Right, the reality of it, and I appreciate you folks that came out, and I did say that. Thankfully, in most of the media outlets, I was quoted correctly, that I was hoping that people would explain what no meant. I did not, nor did I ever say to the Patch, and I contacted Anthony Boleno, who wrote back on Saturday, that he would fix the article, which he did not. I did not say that I hope folks understand what no means to the community. It's not what I said. But I did hope that folks, right, because no is a very big word. And there's a lot of reasons for no in terms of what that looks like. And we need to understand that as a community. Because the more that we talk about it, and in some of the recent meetings referenced, Maureen Rushi, who's the superintendent that I replaced, and a phenomenal educator, a brilliant woman, and an incredible leader. And one of the lines that Maureen used that I've taken on and will use and will always remember is that we must stop admiring the problem. One of the things that we can do is paralyze ourselves as we have. Right? And some of you that came out to the meetings, there were projects contained in the referendum last Tuesday that will be contained in the next referendum whenever it goes out, because they were identified in the 2010 report that was done, that was updated in 2013, that was based on the work that was done back beginning in 1997 and 1998, and the referendum that was adopted in 1999. Those discussions are not new. The roofs are not new. The age of the roofs, the pipes, the sanitary sewer, the lights, the power. That is the reality of what these buildings are. Those things that they build, it is that cumulative process. We talk about communication a lot, and it's one of the things that we can always improve upon. We can always improve upon communication. I am grateful that folks are coming out, and assisting us in that manner of what that looks like, about how we can engage people. Because again, there is work that must be done, because those 11,000 children will continue to show up. Folks brought a lot of topics up, some that have been tonight in the comments, some that have been touched on in discussions with this board, during the course of the last calendar year, and certainly have been touched on with boards in Cherry Hill for the last 25 years, about the number of schools, about where kids attend school, about how we district, about what that looks like, what are the efficiencies. I'm thankful to Mike Holt, who came from Holman Frenia, the accountants. We had a clean audit again this year. To the work that goes on across the district that produces a clean audit for what goes on in terms of the responsibility and the efficiency. There's a reality for all of us who live here in the community, who send our children through the district. And I have 3 that have graduated, and I have 1 that is still here. I'm a proud West graduate as well, as you talk about. I've lived in Cherry Hill for 42 years. There's no place like it. There's an accountability that exists that we all have to embrace as we move forward. And we need to move forward together. It does not benefit any of us to have an ongoing battle with one another. Like I said, there was no win last Tuesday, because we have a generation of children that will walk across the stage at the Leah Corus Center on June 20th, right, knowing that they received an incredible education and had incredible opportunities, are moving on into the world, but they know that there's things that we can do better, not just in terms of the physical plant, but what it looks like for all of us and where we are and who we are. A couple of things that have helped to inform what I've done over the last number of years. One has been the Young Alumni Board that I have met with. As I've talked to kids that have graduated, and kids that are in college, and kids that have graduated or in the workforce, who talk about the perspective, what they were well prepared for, and what the experience was like when they moved on to college or into the military or into work, has been incredibly informative for us. The other thing has been going out to continue to meet with new families. And again, to a person, I've met with nearly 50 families in the last 3 years that are brand new to Cherry Hill. And to a family, each one of them continue to say that they moved to Cherry Hill because of the schools. Right? That's why they are here. The greatest resource that we have in our schools truly are the 1,700 employees. It's the custodians and the cleaners and the secretaries and the teachers, the nurses and the principals who are in those buildings, who have contact with our children on a daily basis. And again, as a community, we've got to work this out and figure out a way that our facilities can support the education that goes on and the experiences those children have in our buildings on a daily basis. Because when I went back to West in 2006 to become the principal, the building did not look dramatically different than it did when I started there in the early 1980s. There was some work that was done, but the building did not look dramatically different. But what was going on in that school was dramatically different. We need to make sure that the facilities can support the children and the experiences that they have and the abilities for what we want them to be able to do once they graduate. So I'm grateful to the board and their discussion tonight, and for the candor that was expressed. We need champions, that are sitting at this table, that are in the community, that are on each side of where we go. Can we do better? We must do better. It's not just that we can, but we must. When we reconvene, when the board reconvenes after the first of the year, there will be ongoing discussions. Expect there'll be a calendar of events to try to bring folks forward. And I will continue to say, because folks contacted me last Thursday and contacted me Friday and over the weekend, and were expressive about that they hope that the vote would not be set for March 12th at tonight's meeting. And some folks I responded to. And I responded to all the ones that emailed, but they responded to and said, because some people were very clear that they actively campaigned against the bond, which I appreciate them saying. But come out and tell us, what does that mean? And whether it's in a meeting like this, to do it in a public forum where we can take notes and we'll watch the video and do it, whether it's in a small group forum, whether it's in a large group, we need to find out what does that mean, right? Because there are certain things that no matter what our emotions are about what goes on, there are factual realities that exist within our buildings. And at some point, we need to come to a comprehensive understanding of here's the factual realities, right? And then move on from there in terms of what takes place. So expect calendar of events. There'll be ongoing discussion, like I say, after the first of the year with the upcoming meetings. Again, for one final time, Ken and Kathy and Barry in absentia, thank you for your service. I'm grateful for all that you do.
Thank you, Dr. Malash. And at this point in time, we're going to move for adjournment to adjourn. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Ms. Seidel and Ms. Matlack. Oh, Kathy. Oh, Kathy. Mrs. Judge. All right, thank you.